call?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Let's see. Ben
Here.
Metzger. We're going to do a roll call. Ken Bresman.
Here.
Sue Wilson.
Here.
Donna Kramer.
Here.
Lori Abernathy.
Here.
Myself, Rob Keller, and Carolyn Langenwalter.
Here.
All right, we're all here.
Very quick good news report for you. Hopefully you've had a chance to look through it. If not, just take a minute. The vocal department does a nice job of giving a year-end recap each year, so I put that in as good news. And then also saw a little bit of test data on AP US History students. We had a dozen students in that class with Mrs. Potabom, and did very well on their AP test. Mean score of 3.92 compared to 2.65 for the state and 2.83 globally. So that's what I have for good news for you this meeting.
All right. Thank you, Art. Next will be the consent agenda. Or let's see, we'll do the delegations first. Okay. Okay, so because of not being able to have a full room and stuff, Art and myself are going to read through the different things that were submitted here from everyone. There are quite a few, you guys, so we're going to take turns. Do you want to start, Art? Would you like
Sure.
to?
I'm reading a message from Todd Forrett. He's the president of Indianola Professional Educators of Iowa. Mr. Forrett writes, Board members and administration, I am writing to you on behalf of the many teachers and support staff that are members of the Indianola chapter of Professional Educators of Iowa. First, we thank you for your efforts as you continue to consider the many variables involved in creating a RTL plan. I would like to present some concerns, questions, and thoughts many employees have regarding the in-person return of students and staff. You have likely considered some of, but not all of these. The number of items is long and a bit speculative. That is the scope of concern we are facing. Our hope is that some of the guidance needed regarding these items will be forthcoming in the next week or two. Number one, what will the procedure be when a teacher, bus driver, support staff, or student test positive? Who has to be quarantined? Number two, substitute availability is a concern when many subs are in the high-risk category. Number three, how will sick days be counted if staff have to stay home with a child that has to quarantine 14 days? Number four, how are lunch periods and cafeterias going to be handled? Number five, many staff travel between different buildings and share space, which creates more exposure for all. Number six, mask wearing seems to be favored. Number seven, would enough PPE be available for staff? Masks, gloves, shields. Number eight, a short day creates good planning time but more daycare issues. Number nine, we have staff with children attending other districts which could impact the amount of exposure. Number 10, is there a number or percentage of confirmed cases in a building or the district that has to arise which would cause a shutdown and a move to remote learning? Number 11, some high school staff have multiple preps, labs, and online classwork. Short days won't allow for much depth of teaching content. Number 12, class sizes are a big concern in being able to social distance and be effective in teaching. Number 13, as a district, many students and teachers are still impacted by the trauma of unexpected student-teacher deaths over the past few years and wish to take any actions necessary to prevent more. Number 14, a case has been made to return in full based on stats and scientific data that support students having little issue being ill or spreading the virus. Concern was raised for those who need academic support and may fall further behind with the delay in return. Some may not favor mandatory masks for reasons such as sanitation, ability to enforce rules, personal hygiene, availability of masks. Although I'm not speaking for each individual member or PEI as a whole, I can say the overwhelming sentiment shared with me by our local PEI members was to start school remotely and ease back into the classroom in steps. Governor Reynolds' recent announcement changes things a bit, so we realize that's not a complete option now. We all want to be in the buildings, but there are many employees that are concerned about their health, are anxious, and not very comfortable starting school in person. The PEI membership thanks you for considering their voices as you move forward and is looking forward to more communication and guidance from the administration and board. With our sincere thanks, Todd Ford.
Thank you, Art. Thank you, Todd, for submitting that. The next document will be, it's submitted from the IEA leaders. Specifically, again, they interviewed and spoke with the members of IEA, and so specifically Brady Darr, Greta Southall, Kyle Berg, and John Clogg. Esteemed members of the board, the following is a collection of the comments and questions I've received from teachers as we prepare for school this fall. Various individuals had expressed a desire to share these questions and comments publicly. We respect the choices you are making to ensure safe social distancing at the meeting, but please insert these public comments for consideration as you review the plan. The job in front of you is tremendous. We thank you for your time, concern, and commitment to the health and well-being of our students, staff, and community. Brady Darr, Indianola Education Association President. We have a number of teachers who serve multiple buildings and see many students in a normal year. Many of them catch various illnesses due to being in contact with so many students in different environments. Are we considering the risk level of various positions based on the amount and type of contact with others? Will there be different expectations based on risk levels? Thank you for acknowledging that planning both online and in-person instruction will require lots of time and care. We appreciate that you are considering releasing school at 1:30 to account for this. If sports or extracurricular activities are canceled, will coaches be paid for the season? If seasons start but end early, how will a decision be made about how much will be received? What measures will we use to determine if school must be shut down again? Would this be by building? Will we listen to science/experts? Social distancing is impossible in our buildings in a typical year. Tracking students will be impossible. Privacy issues will be complicated. Testing and notification will have lag times that will make combating cases impossible. Do sick days count against us in quarantine? How will the district decide who needs to quarantine and when and how long? Will all of this come out of our sick banks? What teacher input was sought in creating this plan? How many teachers were involved? How were they selected? Why do most teachers feel like they have no idea what is going on? Many staff members have family members in multiple buildings. What if one is sick? Do the others have to stay home? Does the 90-minute early dismissal model really address any of the risk of this pandemic? We already face a sub shortage. How will quarantine be handled when staff or students are infected? How much greater will teacher workload be due to online, in-person mix? What support is district leadership prepared to offer to help teachers navigate this change? Why are we not requiring masks for all students and all ages? I feel much better now that older students will be required to wear masks. How is social distancing possible with 25 plus students in a classroom? Feels like double the work to teach two versions of the same class. Double planning. Foreign language instruction will be more difficult without being able to see faces. Conferences, advisory. This spring, teachers experienced a severe lack of clear communication and guidance. What adjustments are going to be made to increase communication? How are we as a district using our time to prepare? Will there be enough PPE? What will be our policy on visitors? What will daily schedules look like? Elementary teachers may be able to keep their classroom group together and away from other students, but middle school and high school teachers and students intermingle every 45 to 90 minutes. Are we considering changes to the schedules to decrease contact and exposure? The first week will be crucial. Are we ready? I'm very concerned about the safety and well-being of my older colleagues. I can't bear the thought of seeing them sick or watching them die. COVID appears to leave long-lasting, permanent effects. Are you prepared to bring students back into a building knowing that you could be forcing people to face long-term health complications? Are all rules, procedures, and mitigations going to be posted throughout the building? What specific guidelines and entities are you using or listening to make these decisions and develop these plans? Can elementary kids still ride the bus to the middle school and enter the building? Is there a way for teachers to quickly get their kids home after 1:20? Will there be childcare available for staff who need to work from 1:30 to the end of the contract day? Many of these individuals haven't needed childcare in some time and don't currently have a provider. Are gloves provided when kids look through books? How will we handle classroom sets of books/materials? We don't have a book or item for every student, only enough for a section. Does every room get cleaning supplies like wipes and hand sanitizer? These are products that run out in a normal year. How many teachers purchase them? And many teachers purchase them out of pocket. Can teachers and staff wear scrubs so that it is easier to decontaminate when returning home before being around families? Would the district consider providing scrubs for employees? What about class sets of books? Do I wipe them down between classes? Is there a certain way the room needs to be arranged? What about extra furniture that needs to be removed? Safety is on everyone's mind. Teachers are concerned about their safety and feel that since masks are not required at the elementary level, those teachers will have more exposure. Elementary parents will not be able to leave their children at home while they go to work, so the chances of sick children coming to school is great. Having 28 students in a classroom is not social distancing, and elementary classrooms will likely experience fewer absences because middle school and high school students can watch themselves and are more likely to stay home when ill. Teachers are also concerned because they themselves are older or feel that they are at higher risk of contracting the virus. Some care for elderly parents or other high-risk individuals in their homes. They are worried about the safety of those in their households. What options do they have? How will the district accommodate these needs? What kind of PPE will be provided? There will be a sub-shortage. Will teachers, especially reading teachers, be pulled to cover classes? Reading teachers are concerned about the educational needs that their own students will be missing if pulled frequently. Will the school be able to supply enough hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes? What if kids in the age ranges where masks are required refuse to wear them? How will we monitor that? Who is in charge of enforcing this policy? What is the sub-procedure? Are teachers responsible for taking temperatures? What is the process for traveling between classes? Are teachers required to eat lunch in their classrooms with the kids? If so, how will we ensure the 30 minutes duty-free lunch as outlined in the contract is observed? As an associate, I understand that they are wanting to try to come back. But if they do not, and they go with online classes, how are we, associates, supposed to help our students? A lot of them take that extra push and FaceTime to get what they need done. Some students in the BD room, I can see not even logging into the classroom. All I hear about is general education students. As a mother of a special education student, I can help my student with everything except math. This is not my forte. How will he get the one-on-one help he needs? This class is very hard for him, and I am not adequately adept in the teachings. Is there an action plan for a student who refuses to wear a mask at school? Also, if school is taught online, will associates be able to get some sort of iPad or notebook to log on to? As of right now, I use my phone and data for everything. If not, will we be compensated for our phone bills? If not, does that mean we will have to search for another job? When the shutdown happened, we never got called to help out. Sure, they asked for volunteers, but they were usually full. Thank you, Mr. Keller. I appreciate the district's attention to the return to learn plans. I am brainstorming, but please consider these questions. Will there be a cap of the number of students able to attend on site? Middle school is a building designed for 750 people. We are pushing 1,000. What will social distancing look like in this setting? Passing time. restroom breaks, water fountains / bottles. How is in-class book usage addressed, especially for library materials, classes that have sets of novels, textbooks, etc.? What will the expectations be for partner work, discussion, sharing, teacher-pupil interaction, communal supplies and surfaces, meal service in classrooms? Teachers will still enjoy 30-minute duty-free lunch break daily? That's a question, sorry. Will districts supply tissue, Kleenex, cleaners, sanitizers, PPE? To what degree? Is contract tracing for those testing positive addressed in the plan? Music programming, chorus. You're getting questions there. I want to know if anyone has considered the glaring problem of substitutes. We have had a problem with coverage under normal circumstances, and this will be compounded when staff inevitably gets sick or becomes exposed to someone with COVID-19. Several people have asked whether teachers asked to take sick leave will also be asked to continue teaching remote learning. Can this be sustained for 2 weeks, and is this not a violation of the contract? Are additional hand washing stations and hand sanitizer stations being installed? Where? I am concerned about whether our existing pool of subs will be willing to come to our building at all. And what happens when a sub who has worked at multiple buildings tests positive? The lag time for symptoms as well as test results makes this single issue one that should shut us back down by October. While I am initially reassured by the low mortality rate of COVID-19 among younger people, I have still seen it around 0.2 to 0.5%. This sounds great until you apply that to large numbers, like say a high school or over 1,000 students, and staff. This still means that we are basically planning on working around the funerals of 2 to 6 kids and or staff to reopen somewhat normally. I personally am not prepared for that reality, even with the understandable and relatable cost of not reopening. Those are my biggest concerns, although whenever I think too much about it, several more come up. How are we handling staff with known medical conditions? Are you communicating the procedure for requesting reasonable accommodations under the Americans with Disabilities Act? How do you plan to keep people informed enough that they are aware of their risk while also maintaining confidentiality? Is the district going into each classroom, marking the floor and calculating how many students can actually be in each while maintaining social distance of 6 feet? Is the district providing an additional leave, or is the only additional leave available the 80 hours outlined in the Family First legislation? I live in a different district. If my child is sick and forced to quarantine, can I take leave to care for them? Will it be paid? How will we ensure that kids on our campuses and in our buildings are healthy? What kind of health screenings will be done? Where, how, and by whom? What additional cleaning measures are being implemented? There was mention that high-touch surfaces are going to be wiped down regularly. Does that mean teachers will do that? Will they be trained in how to do this properly? Who will ensure supplies don't run out? We regularly have to buy hand sanitizer, Kleenex, and Clorox wipes when the district supply runs out before the next month's allotment has arrived. How will we handle contract tracing with such large populations where kids move and interact fluidly throughout the day? In the high school, kids drag their backpacks in all the rooms and the bathrooms. Can we limit how much stuff from the outside, like backpacks and coats, is brought into the classrooms? Will plexiglass be used at all to help provide barriers and strengthen social distancing efforts? What is our trauma plan going to look like for the first time a student or teacher dies? Will that be communicated ahead of time? Why are we not considering required face masks for elementary students? What is the plan for when a kid shows up to school sick? Where do we send them? How do we get them out of the building quickly? What happens to those other students and adults that have been in contact with that child that day? Are we reducing class sizes? My room cannot accommodate my normal class sizes if kids have to be 6 feet apart. What happens when a staff member gets COVID and can't come to work? Does that time count against our sick days? While on sick leave, will teachers be expected to remote teach? Have we done anything to shore up our sub list? Because I feel like we're going to need them, and that will probably be what shuts us down later in September or October. If teachers need to be quarantined and stay home, they have to ask for a sick day, but they will still be working from home. How is that sick day? How is that a sick day? I don't mind working from home if I need to be quarantined, but if I'm working, I don't need to get a sick day. Okay, everybody get that? Yeah. Sorry. Now that they are requesting masks for students, I do feel better. Not sure how the social distancing is going to work in a classroom with 25 or greater students, and hallways and cafeteria. The schedule of short classes to accommodate online will impact the curriculum greatly this year and the next ones. Having to teach in person and then online feels like double the work. I do understand that's the situation this year, and we all have to be flexible and get it done. But I also feel that after taking care of a day teaching at full speed due to short periods with the load of work we usually have, now we have another load online. Planning for classes in person and classes online are two very different things regardless of how many tech tools you have. It's double planning in the same amount of time. Will we have to develop new assessments too due to the online classes? What will be done for parent-teacher conferences and advisory for the kids online? If a case of COVID comes to a school, how will we be notified on who needs to be tested? What if there is a backlog on tests and results? Will we be expected to teach and learn while results are processing? If we are supposed to take leave, does that come out of our sick leave or FMLA? I am concerned about being in such close contact with so many students every single day who are going out to God knows where before and after the hours of school. That is when we will not be tracking students. I am concerned that when, not if, COVID appears in Indianola, high school teachers and students won't be told about it until it's too late. I am concerned about my wife teaching in another school within the district. If one of us is exposed, are both of us If one of us is exposed, are both of us exposed and therefore out for 14 days? Will we be forced to use our sick days? It's almost as if the plan tries to balance both sides by trying to appeal to COVID deniers and then people who believe there is a global pandemic. It seems asking for input or ideas might be appropriate, but time is now slipping away and teachers will not be prepared to start the year. It is crucial to start this year with clear direction and expectations for both teachers and students, or we will end up with mass confusion.
This is from David Dubček. Hello, my name is David Dubček, and I teach 7th and 8th grade computer science in the middle school. I'm submitting a comment today to express my unease, my fear of returning to full in-person learning. I'm also speaking on behalf of more than 50 people who've told me they feel the same. If only it were as simple as saying sick people stay home, but this virus is spread significantly by asymptomatic people, including individuals who never have a fever. If only it were as simple as getting sick and getting better, but so many people have been discharged from the hospital for months and still haven't recovered back to normal. If only it were as simple as isolating the high risk, but this disease has also struck down the perfectly healthy. If only it were as simple as wearing masks, but I guarantee you our middle school students will find every opportunity to take their mask off. I won't make this political us versus you. To some, advocating for our health means we don't care about our students. And to others, advocating for in-person learning means you don't care about teachers. I believe all of you deeply care about all the students and adults in our school system. Those of you who know me, I hope, would say the same about me. There's no doubt you know the facts, but our fears are real and fact-driven. COVID-19 is a virus for which the severity of the infection strikes randomly. Some recover in a few days, some are still actively fighting the infection 90 days later. The financial cost of fighting COVID-19, including any potential hospitalization, has the potential to be significant. Many of those who are no longer fighting an active infection are still experiencing lingering symptoms, including but not limited to lung and other organ damage, chronic fatigue, and cognitive impairment, brain fog, even 90+ days later. Any opportunity for in-person learning is also an opportunity to spread the virus. As a district, many students and teachers are still impacted by the trauma of unexpected student and teacher deaths over the past few years and wish to take any actions necessary to prevent more. The CDC guidelines are only able to slow the spread of the virus, not stop it. The only way to stop the spread in school is not to bring people into the buildings. Personally, I am terrified of what this school year could bring. I'm a runner. What happens to me if I suffer lung and heart damage? I need all my energy to teach the way I want every day. What happens if COVID gives me chronic fatigue? I'm a writer. What happens if COVID gives me permanent cognitive impairment and brain fog? And what happens to my family if I don't recover? A COVID exposure in the classroom could take many of the things that make our lives worth living. I know our options are limited under the governor's recent mandate, but here's what we can do. We can encourage as many families as possible to elect the virtual learning option. We can promote it as a sign of caring, save the in-person learning for the students who need it most, and trust our teachers to ensure everyone else can learn just as well remotely where they're safe. Those who elect to stay home do so as a way to care for their fellow students and teachers who cannot. We can set up an A-day, B-day system for everyone else to further limit building capacity and still stay within the confines of the governor's requirement. Or we can strictly follow CDC guidelines for physical distancing by tripling our building footprints by August 20th. With the measures we need to set up in the buildings to ensure everyone's safety, will the students who choose in-person learning even think it's worth it? We know there are many challenges with virtual learning, and they're important challenges. Serving students with disabilities, English language learners, students who need reading and math support, but we are educators. Those are the questions we are experts at solving. Those are the questions that excite, challenge, and invigorate us. If you set us free from the worry of contracting COVID in our classrooms, and if we're freed from the constraints of what we've always done, this year could be the most exciting year we've ever had. Things we learn how to do this year can supercharge our learning for years to come. I assure you, your tax dollars will not be wasted. Free us and will make our community proud. But if we are forced to be back in mostly full classrooms during the pandemic, those questions will all take a back seat to wondering which of the kids in our room is asymptomatic, whether we have enough life insurance, and praying that we won't lose another one of our students or colleagues. I've spent the past several years working to become an expert on creative problem solving. I'm confident that every one of the barriers to virtual learning can be solved. I'm less confident that the mitigation measures we take in our buildings can ever be enough. Those measures will bring traditional classroom learning so far away from normal that we have to ask, is it even worth it? We must find ways to serve as many students remotely as we legally can. If we don't, people will die. People we know, your kids' teachers, your kids' friends, me or my friends. Those left behind will know that it was preventable. Thank you. And then he's provided a petition with 59 signatures as well. It's titled Reconsider In-Person Learning.
The next message is from a parent in our district, Lisa. I will spell her last name. She'll go by Lisa Cause. And the spelling of the last name is, for the minutes, is K-O-Z as in zebra, I-C as in cat, Z as in zebra, K as in kite, O as in Oliver, W, S as in Sam, K as in kite, I as in igloo. Most parents would agree that the debate with masks will never be won, maybe ever. That being said, both sides have voiced concerns and are now leaving it up to the schools to have to make the ultimate decision to side with a line of thinking. Logically, most can understand and empathize with where this puts all of you. Emotionally, this is going to be a heated issue with no true winner. Please know I get that. And I'm coming to you with as much fact, data-driven statements as possible. If masks were to be highly recommended, knowing the importance currently being placed on mask wearing, the school district would maintain the ability to be respectful to all who attend. And she has some points under this. The school cannot guarantee that masks will keep SARS-CoV the COV2 out of the schools. The potential to have masks mandated and still have COVID-19 positive cases in the school is a real potential. The school cannot guarantee nor have the time to ensure every child from grades 6 to 12 would maintain proper mask wearing. With decreased daily teaching times, education needs to be the main focus in the classrooms. Proper mask wearing will have to fall on parental instruction and reinforcement at home of proper wearing of their mask. Masks have always been in conjunction with proper and frequent hand washing and distancing. All of these things can be impressed on our children by parents. 6th through 12th grade have the capacity to remember and have signs reminding them to frequently wash hands, wear masks when in close proximity of others, and distance as much as possible. Obviously, distancing is an issue with all grades, but also is proper mask wearing. Unfortunately, with as much improper wearing and touching being an issue, masks don't meet the needs of that distancing portion either. With all of this, highly recommending and encouraging parents to have their children adhere to guidelines of when not able to distance, wear a mask without mandating for that to be done. This allows for respect of both sides of the equation. Without absolute and clear concise data, we don't have 100% answer to this. We have no guarantees, and with the amount of children that improperly wear and use masks, we have no true protection with mandating that we do with voluntary wearing masks, where students and parents feel this is needed. Parents need to take responsibility in helping to keep their children safe. However that looks for each family unit. Remember to teach respect that not every family's plans will look the same, and that's okay. There's definitely an emotional component to this issue. Thankfully, parents care deeply for their children. I don't in any way think the school is not feeling that all lives that come there aren't important. I also know that you are missing a lot of data on how mask wearing longer term at all grades will impact physical development, emotional development, and current emotional needs and issues. We know that the isolation of the past few months have taken an emotional toll on a lot of children, and therefore the push to get them back into school, routine, ability to get back to learning, social interaction with peers, etc. is huge. Long term on speech and communication haven't been studied either. Lots of data for long term, and we have no real idea how long masks will be highly recommended for being flu season is arriving, and we don't know what that will bring to the mix. Again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, just look for a balance in the spectrum of mask frustrations. I believe in bringing some potential solutions if I bring issues. I offer up these ideas for potential ways to mitigate some of the issues that have been brought up. Fans in classrooms, as much of a distraction as the added noise potentially brings, it allows for more air movement, leaving less stagnant air around the students and teachers. This helps also disperse and decrease concentration of the majority of airborne illnesses and such. Allow for teachers to wear masks and shields to help them to have added protection if they would want to do so. Make that allowable for students also. This would also open up the ability for those that can't wear a mask and would like to have something to be able to use as a face shield instead. Allow teachers to be able to remind students that there's a lot of emotions from parents about masks, but at school there needs to be a neutral zone. This is a place of learning. The mask debate can be done outside the school arena to allow for school to be a safe place to be without judgment and shaming on either side. Students have the right to learn Students have the right to learn with or without a mask. There will be children without masks, even with the mandate, so this applies to all situations. Have students create positive signs for around the school to help promote respect for those that wear masks and those that don't. Friendly reminders that respect goes far beyond the mask. Have reminders for hand washing, not touching and playing with masks, proper mask wearing, helping to respect space between people to allow for distancing, while still being able to socialize. Student councils could help do these and promote a balanced outlook to the coming year. Use the students to drive uplifting and empowerment through positive statements in the classroom, throughout the day, etc. Not all kiddos with IEPs can wear masks, and yet potentially need more protection. Help to keep distance and stay COVID safe throughout the day. Looking before school starts to find out the kiddos with IEPs needs with the parents and developing plans that allow for COVID rules to apply. Allow the parents to help develop plans to keep their children safe while still integrated and functioning as normal as possible and getting the support they need. This may mean some creative thinking. Use the parents to help in this process and make the team stronger with keeping the ability to be flexible and dynamic during these first few months of school returning. Communication. Letting parents know how things are going through the first few weeks. What have the pitfalls been? Where can we all work together to help create a place of learning versus struggle due to all the changes? Patience on both sides. Remember, as we all talk with each other, that we are all after the same end goals. A safe and productive return to school. Lisa Cause.
This letter is from Melissa Heiser, Heyser. Mr. Sadoff, I'm writing to express my concern regarding measures the Indianola Community School Board has proposed for students and staff in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are facing an unprecedented health crisis in this country, which demands development of new and creative solutions. As an RN with 30-plus years experience in healthcare that includes inpatient hospital care, being a health associate at Whittier Elementary, working in the home health setting, and most recently as an at-home daycare provider, I can confidently state that our district is either A, not considering adequate protective procedures for our students, or B, not explaining them clearly to the community. There are many options available that would better serve the safety of our children and district staff than those currently voiced on the district's communication sources. I strongly encourage everyone involved to consider reviewing evidence-based information beyond what is being made available through the Iowa Department of Public Health, Warren County Public Health, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, the Iowa Department of Education, and Governor Kim Reynolds. I firmly believe undue political pressure is being applied to state and federal officials to minimize the current status of this pandemic and encourage a return to the classroom when that is not yet safe. Please consider the following information. A recent study by the chief virologist for Germany, a nation that has successfully controlled COVID-19 to date, found no significant difference in the viral loads of the new coronavirus between any pair of age categories, including children. Based on their findings, the researchers concluded children may be as infectious as adults and recommended that countries practice caution against an unlimited reopening of schools and kindergartens in the present situation. I don't believe this virus is an exception, Wong said. As long as there is community transmission in the adult population, reopening of schools will likely facilitate transmission, as respiratory viruses are known to circulate in schools and daycares. Are any of these studies definitive? The answer is no, of course not, said Jeffrey Shaman, an epidemiologist at Columbia University, who was not involved in the studies. As such, to open schools because of some uninvestigated notion that children aren't really involved in this, that would be a very foolish thing, Shaman said. Evidence that masks work. She cites an article, abc13.com/coronavirus-testing-attempt to help stop spread of COVID-19 outbreak pandemic. Dr. Alino Alonso, Palm Beach County's Health Department Director, warned county commissioners Tuesday that much is unknown about the long-term health consequences for children who catch COVID-19. X-rays have revealed the virus can cause lung damage even in people without severe symptoms, she said. They are seeing there is damage to the lungs in these asymptomatic children. We don't know how that is going to manifest a year from now or 2 years from now, Alonso said. Is that child going to have chronic pulmonary problems or not? Dr. Daniel Dominic, president of AASA, the School Superintendents Association, is quoted as saying, You want to open schools according to what was phase 2 from the White House a couple of months ago, where the rate of infection is going down, not up. The key thing here are the conditions, the rate of the epidemic in that community. If it's going up, you don't want to open. If it's going down and it's stable, opening following the precautions listed by the CDC are important. It has to be when it is safe to open, not the conditions we see in many states where the infection rate is high. Dr. George Salinas, an epidemiologist at UIHC, said one of the difficulties of addressing the pandemic has been researchers' changing understanding of how the virus spreads. Recent studies, for example, have shown that roughly 40% of people are asymptomatic when they've tested positive for the disease. Salinas pointed to an April 2020 study of 2 coronavirus public health models that found that even with continued social distancing post-lockdown, without widespread use of face masks, infection rates would increase, eventually affecting half the population. In a population the size of the United Kingdom, the study estimated the number of deaths could top 1 million. There is information regarding how the virus is spread indoors at www.erinbromage.com/post/the risk, know them, avoid them. Ms. Bromage is a comparative immunologist and professor of biology, especially in immunology at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. Florida is documenting an increase in the number of pediatric cases. The orlando-sentinel.com/OS-NE-coronavirus-pediatric.covid numbers. From the CDC, guiding principles to keep in mind. The more people a student or staff member interacts with, and the longer the interaction, the higher the risk of COVID-19 spread. The risk of COVID-19 spread increases in school settings as follows. Number 1, lowest risk, students and teachers engage in virtual-only classes, activities, and events. Number 2, more risk, small in-person classes, activities, and events. Groups of students stay together and with the same teacher throughout and across school days, and groups do not mix. Students remain at least 6 feet apart and do not share objects, e.g. hybrid virtual and in-person class structures or staggered/rotated scheduling to accommodate smaller class sizes. Number 3, highest risk, full-size in-person classes, activities, and events. Students are not spaced apart, share classroom materials or supplies, and mix between classes and activities. Regarding toileting, when a person infected with COVID-19 defecates, the germ at first settles into the toilet bowl. The flushing process can lift the virus out of the toilet and cause cross-infection among people, says Ji Zhang Wang, a physicist at Yangzhou University in China and co-author on the paper published June 16th in the journal Physics of Fluids. Absent more hygienic upgrades, Wang advises wearing a face mask when using a public restroom. One of the most effective ways to keep potentially infected aerosols of any kind from flying into the air, Wang adds, is to simply install lids on public toilets. Should all students go back to school? Consider a staged approach to returning to school or another delay to allow Iowans to do the right thing and wear masks. Redeemer Lutheran Church in Indianola has developed a plan for a staged return to in-person worship. When there is a clear downward trajectory in the number of positive cases and the rate of positive tests in the surrounding geographical area for 2 consecutive weeks, only then will worship return to in-person. It will be limited in numbers and masks will be required for all attendees. The county courthouse is requiring masks. Many stores are requiring masks. Wells Fargo and Principal Financial in Des Moines are keeping their work-at-home policy in place until the end of September. Yet we expect our youngest and most vulnerable children to attend school and not require masks. There is a link here to medium.com/@Shayla R. Griffin. Some students should go to school, most should stay at home. That's the title of that article. Assigning children to mornings or afternoons only for each day of the week would allow for a decrease in class size, have food be the first activity of the day, send lunch and snacks home for those who may be food insecure. I'm certain you're already well versed in the information that I have shared above. What I am requesting is mandatory mask wearing for all school students and staff that are involved with in-person learning. Having toilets without lids increases the importance of wearing masks. We all know how young kids especially like to watch the flush. I'm aware of the Governor's proclamation on July 17, 2020. I'm also aware that individual school districts maintain significant control of how this return to school is managed because Iowa is a home rule state, meaning that a large number of decisions are left to local authorities like school boards. With instructional focus at home and school regarding wearing masks, I am confident it is possible for students of all ages to wear a face mask on a daily basis, to safely manage taking it on and off, and storing it in a safe manner. I also have confidence in the majority of our students taking this step seriously and trying to do their best to stay safe. Rather than approach this with the mindset that it won't work, do everything we possibly can to set our children up for success and make this work. Additionally, I am concerned about the workload expected of our teachers and support staff, the actual time provided them for adequate planning versus spending time cleaning their room, and the availability of substitutes when staff get ill. What is the backup plan? Prepare for the worst and hope for the best, or simply hope for the best? I applaud all the district staff and team members that have been working so hard to put alternate plans in place. You and your efforts are very much appreciated. Please continue to look beyond governmental demands and develop even better and stronger methods of keeping us all safe.
Next message is from Carol Glosser, Glosser, a mother from our district. My biggest concern is an on-again, off-again school year. There is little hope for my children's success in that scenario. With 3 high schoolers, that could be up to 18 different classes to manage, plus an IEP elementary student. We all need consistency. If we go to online, I'll probably pull several out permanently and homeschool. The back and forth is not feasible. What if there is a positive case? Will that class be sent home for 14 days? What if it's an undiagnosed fever? I know this is tough, but I need answers before I can make such an important decision about how to lead my family through this school year. Hasn't there been agreement on mask and improper usage? I can see no way to not turn the children's mask into health hazards. What would be a way to prevent the children from becoming sicker from wearing contaminated masks? Also, I don't know if this has been addressed, but if there are high-risk teachers, could they be assigned to online classes? That seems like a great way to mitigate the need for the teacher not to be around too many students and allows more time for teachers from the classroom.
This is from Emily Fox. Good afternoon, Superintendent Art Sadoff and our school board members. I wanted to start off my email today letting you all know how much you each are appreciated. I don't fully know, but I can understand how much time and care you all have put in since spring break last school year. In these unprecedented times, you have each had to make tough decisions, and decisions you didn't exactly want to make, but you made them with our children's, teachers, and faculty's safety in mind. I know in the coming days you'll be making decisions on how best to safely start the 2020-2021 school year. I can only imagine the information overload you have each had to read up on and listen to and consider in order to make these decisions. All the long hours it takes and time it takes to come to these decisions. I thank each of you and I appreciate you all so much for your continued efforts with the safety of our children, teachers, and faculty is the top priority. The reason for my email is regarding the survey that I took recently. As a parent of 5 children, I have my own day-to-day stressors and worries with the world we are in currently. However, as a CMA, prior to being a stay-at-home mom, I have some knowledge medically. I've done a lot of reading the past few months. I know with science, disease, and illness, it takes time to develop facts and data. We are now 5 months into this, and there are still so many unknowns and still so many maybes. If you visit the cdc.gov website, the most common question is, how is COVID-19 spread? The response starts out to say, the virus that causes COVID-19 is thought to spread mainly from person to person, mainly through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby or possibly be inhaled into the lungs. Spread is more likely when people are in close contact with one another within about 6 feet. If you go to the WHO.int website, their response to how the virus is spread is this. Current evidence suggests that COVID-19 spreads between people through direct, indirect, through contaminated objects or surfaces, or close contact with infected people via mouth and nose secretions. These include saliva, respiratory secretions, or secretion droplets. These are released from the mouth or nose when an infected person coughs, sneezes, speaks, or sings, for example. People who are in close contact, within 1 meter, with an infected person can catch COVID-19 when those infectious droplets get into their mouth, nose, or eyes. The two commonalities with each of these are the words thought to and evidence suggest. Those speak volumes to me. While they do have data to speak to this being true, they still have data that proves this not to be true, and they aren't positive as of yet how exactly this virus is passed and contracted. Being a medically trained professional, I know the purpose of PPE equipment, and I also have the knowledge of how to properly put PPE equipment on and take it off and discard it properly. I also have the knowledge to properly wear it, which reaches me to my concerns of mask wearing. In order for someone to properly protect themselves and others, they must keep the mask on at all times and not touch it. When you touch the mask to simply remove it in order to eat, you have now contaminated your food with everything you have encountered in the hours prior to you removing the mask. Then while you're eating, you pick up things on your hands, and your mouth produces things that get into the air on surfaces and on your hands. When you go to put your mask back on, everything that has happened while eating is now on that mask and ready to be transmitted into your afternoon encounters. Even adjusting your mask or simply touching it without thinking about it, because it itches the germs on your without thinking about it, because it itches, the germs on your mask are now on your hands. This is called cross-contamination and can cause far more harm than good. I watch every single day adults in our community wearing masks improperly and constantly touching their mask, and then continue touching items in the store and put them back on the shelves. I ask you to think about this when you're considering making masks mandatory for the 2020-21 school year. How can we expect our children to conduct themselves properly wearing masks when we as adults can't even do so in a few short hours at a store? Our children learn at different levels. They have daily struggles and things to overcome daily while they learn. Even the very best students can be easily distracted in the classroom. I worry about this when we add masks into the equation of the school day. Some children are capable of keeping a mask on themselves all day without issues or being a distraction. However, what about the children that would be distracted by a mask? This adds an extra stressor in the classroom environment for our teachers during the school day. We as parents know our children and what they struggle with daily and how they will best learn in the classroom. I am asking that masks be optional. I completely understand that the tough decisions being made will not be perfect and they will never please anyone. I only ask you to consider masks being optional because I have found this to be the best solution in the current times. Some feel more comfortable with a mask or face covering, and others do not, or due to health reasons they are unable to wear a mask or face covering, which is why I have concluded that families have the option of sending their children to school with or without a mask. We as parents know our children the best, and I feel all of us parents should be able to have that choice when it comes on this subject.
The following message is from Suzanne and Bernard McDonald. Dear School Board, we write regarding return to learn plans. We are aware that Superintendent Sadoff will be making recommendations to the school board tonight. He tells us that he recognizes the need to be flexible during the ever-changing situation that is this global pandemic, unprecedented in our lifetime, and we really appreciate his understanding. Recognizing the need to be flexible, considering that Iowa is now a hotspot, and always taking decisions based on science is what we were asking for. When Governor Reynolds' handling of the pandemic seems reckless, thoughtless, political, and careless regarding the health and safety of our kids, school staff, and families. We are hoping you will put safety first for us. please set a higher bar than our governor. That said, we were not happy with the recent survey provided, results now posted online, regarding masks. It did not include an option that we consider acceptable, which would be mask for all. Science shows that masks do not work maximally unless everyone is wearing them, especially given that the virus can be passed asymptomatically. It may appear that we are in the minority, but please consider that some of us were not given a chance for our voices to even be heard with that survey as it was written. We have family members who fall into a high-risk category according to the CDC, and therefore our hope is that you can indeed assure us that an online option will remain an offer for those of us who do not consider it safe to send our children back to school yet, but also don't have the expertise or time due to our own online work commitments to become full-time homeschoolers. We hope that the online learning will be synchronous whenever possible. Whenever possible. Well, doggone it, I lost my place now, guys. The eyes are going here. Whenever possible. As providing a quality education for all means not leaving kids to flounder on their own with no oversight and only posted assignments. It also would include the ability for them to be with their classmates, even if just virtually. Even if our 2 kids were to do online instruction, we are still glad that there are recommendations such as having temperatures taken in the classroom at the beginning of the day. It doesn't catch the asymptomatic, but might mitigate the spread. This virus is in our town. 2 restaurants have already closed because of employees with COVID, and we need to take a collective effort to stop the spread. Many thanks for your dedication to the safety of our students, teachers, and families. We recognize that these decisions are difficult ones, but please consider that the right decisions are not always the popular ones. Better to be safe than terribly sorry. Sincerely, Suzanne and Bernard McDonald.
I saved my short one for the last one here.
I got a shorter one too.
This is from Carrie Ann Boyce. Please share the following with the board during public comment time. As someone who knows how challenging your job is in the best of times, I want to thank you all for your service during this time of extreme uncertainty. I trust each and every one of you is considering the options for Indianola students, parents, staff, and teachers for the coming year and weighing the pros and cons of all possibilities. You won't please everyone, but I hope the entire community can come together and make the best of a situation no one could have ever imagined. Thank you again for your work.
This message is from Amy Shivers, a mother in our district. I have tried not to bring emotion into this conversation of mask versus no mask, but as a parent of several students in the district, that's really hard for me to do. I feel that even with emotion-based reasons, they are very valid and deserve to be heard. After talking with my kids and hearing from some of their friends, not one of them feels like anything positive will come from wearing a mask. Every one of them was either stressed due to anxiety or thought the whole idea was stupid. Their word, not mine. Please understand the word stupid comes loaded with its own level of emotion, mostly anger and frustration. The ones with anxiety have mentioned concerns of breathing. If they were to have a panic attack, it would become more difficult to breathe, and there's a fear of passing out. The ones using the word stupid are saying that because they feel as though it will be a joke and no one will use them correctly. They think some teachers won't want to mess with it and won't make them wear them. There is concern that students will use it as another prop for distraction. You will have students simply defy educators for another new reason by refusing to wear them. The mask will be another new way of setting kids apart. They will all wear different ones, and that could mean more ways of kids getting bullied. The schools already struggle with that as it is. So I ask, with so many other aspects there are in a classroom, please don't add extra stress for the educators and students. Please allow them to come back to learn and be nurtured like they have in the past. Our children's emotional needs should be weighed heavily into this decision too. Amy Shivers. And that ends the public comment portion.
I'm just here as a part of the IEA. We've already been represented.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle, for coming. One second here, I just gotta remember what I'm doing.
Agenda, or the consent agenda.
That's right, Lori. We're moving on to the consent agenda now. I guess before that, thank you to everyone that's listening tonight. Thank you to everyone that submitted their comments. We do understand that this is an emotionally charged issue right now, and thank you for everyone's comments and reaching out to the board members either through this evening or all the emails, text, phone calls, and in-person visits that we've received over the last several days. Okay, the consent agenda is in your board packet. Anyone have any questions?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion made by Ken for approval of the consent agenda,
I'll second.
seconded by Carolyn. Any further board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Mrs. Duran, do you want to let the TLC be more presentation?
Next will be our presentation in regards to the return to learn plan.
Actually, we have
Oh, we got one more.
TLC, the TLC committee met and had some discussion in response to some questions that were raised. And we've got a few of your TLC members here. So.
Hi, I'm Kim Grissom. So after the last board meeting, I pulled together the TLC team. There were 9 people on the team. They represent all buildings across the district. Lots of different types of teachers, everything from new teachers to like very veteran teachers. Teachers who have been involved with TLC since the beginning and people who haven't. So I brought these 2 ladies to talk about the process that they went through and the decision that the team came to.
So we met last week to talk about the role that coaches will play in our buildings. Is one of the things we talked about, whether they will continue the role that they already have, or they will do like a halftime coach, halftime other duties to be decided kind of a thing, where they could potentially be working with students in in a reading group, or being in classrooms co-teaching with teachers and that kind of thing. Basically, we could not come to a decision yet because we felt like the people that have like are in it, needed maybe some to give some feedback. So we will be meeting later on or around the time when school starts, first couple of weeks or whatever, to talk with some building principals, to talk with some actual coaches, to see what their opinion is, since they know obviously more about their job than we do. But it was very much a 2-sided conversation. I felt like the discourse was really just intellectual and helps. I came in with thinking one thing, and then I left thinking a different thing. So it's hard to have a right answer, but so we just wanted to delay that decision until we can maybe gather some more data and talk with some people who actually do those jobs.
So our plan is to meet with them. I'm Joe Moore, and I teach special ed at Wilder Elementary. But our plan is to meet with them and our group again 2 weeks after traditional starts. And in the meantime, we're going to have the coaches tracking a lot of information and data about what they're doing if they're doing extra and where it's at and where we might be able to use them and pay for that, and the differences that that could make and where it could lead with our decision as a group. But the most important thing, like Morgan said, was it was really important to us that they had a say in the decision that we were talking about, that include it was based on their job and their employment position. So
Kyle, you want to add anything?
As a high school teacher and kind of working with these guys as well too, knowing that this was mostly going to be an elementary school based thing, I was glad that our input was allowed and decided, but we did want to kind of take a step back and let the people who it's going to affect most kind of make more of a decision to see how it was going to affect them in the future and what kind of supports that our coaches could provide them more in the classroom as well too.
Some of the things that were talked about, obviously the biggest goal is that our students have the best opportunity to learn and grow and see, focus on student achievement. And it's hard to make sure that happens without somebody helping teachers also be the best they can be. So there is like that kind of side to the story. But then there was also, if a coach can work with teachers in the classroom, then more students are being served in a lesser amount of time than what we normally have during a school day. So it was hard. There were pros and cons to both of them, I felt like, but ultimately, like, the goal is making sure that students have opportunities to have success this school year.
So the team tasked me with a short list of things to do in the meantime. So we'll plan that meeting for the second week of traditional. They asked that elementary coaches and elementary principals attend that meeting so that questions can be asked and answered. They would like to see the data of where our kids actually start the year. And so that's why they decided to wait until traditional started, because there was a lot of discussion about what will the needs be. Will the needs be virtual learning needs? Will they be student needs, like really working with students, teaching a small group or doing math intervention? Or will it be a lot more during the virtual portion of the day? Is there a way that teachers can be involved in that? Will it be subbing? There was just a lot of discussion about all of the questions that we don't have answers to. So what we'll do in the meantime is reiterate to all teachers and principals in the district what it is that coaches can do and how they can be a part of the classroom. There are some ways that they can work in classrooms without changing their role. And so we're going to work in multiple ways. The team gave lots of ideas about how we can really make sure that teachers have a good message of what it is that they can ask coaches to do in the meantime. And then the coaches are going to be really meticulous about keeping records of what they are doing in those first few weeks of school, how much time they're spending in classrooms, how much time they might be doing things like assessing kids, or if they're subbing, or whatever it is that those first few weeks look like. And then they'll bring that information to the team when they reconvene so that they can have that information to help them make that decision.
So do we have like plans to really test kids right at the beginning in a standard way that we know where they stand? Or is it just kind of like you get a gut feel and then 2 weeks into it you kind of make a...
The information coming out from the state is to not heavily test kids immediately when they come back. Okay. Is to focus in on building relationships and easing them back into the school setting. There's a lot of formative assessments that teachers have typically used, or different types of screeners, but the full-on testing is not recommended. Even the FAST testing for the early literacy, which we have expanded up through grade 8 in literacy and math. They set a 2-month window now at this point, and they're recommending you try to conclude that assessment almost at the end of that window. So that's a part of that discussion is we have some of the results from last year. We have grades, we have attendance, all of those different types of concerns. So that will come into what the teachers will be reviewing for those kids. The other part is the instructional alignment that they did this past spring, where, for example, the prior grade level or the prior course teachers at the high school mapped out what the kids missed, and the teachers already have plans as to how they'll start weaving that into their learning starting off with the semester. So we're taking a look at all of those different pieces, along with, we have a new tool called Performance Matters that we've been slowly trying to implement and get into place. And that tool, teachers can create formative assessments based on standards. So they can do real quick, short, quiz-like type assessments within that to start seeing for those standards where the kids are at. But there's nothing like ISASP or a full-blown benchmarking immediately, and it hasn't been recommended. So if that guidance changes, we'll be ready to adapt to that too.
So when you have this meeting, 2 weeks after school started, are you going to include some classroom teachers or get their input as to what they might be most helpful to them?
Classroom teachers are included already on that committee, but I, as a CNI teacher, I'm willing to talk to other, teachers in my building at least to see what they think also. I'm a very social person.
Because I'd love to have their input,
Yeah.
especially this year.
Yeah, right.
Is there a representative from each school on the committee?
Yep. I teach 3rd grade at Emerson, so.
Can you also express that to the other elementary representatives to make sure that they visit with the classroom teachers? And then will you guys have a decision for us by that following board meeting?
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's our goal.
Yeah.
Okay. So early September, probably.
Well, yeah, our August meetings are the 10th and 24th. Start school the 25th, so probably the 2nd. I would guess the 2nd, you'll be meeting around the time of the 1st September meeting.
Yeah, we decided 2 weeks after school started, mostly because of the relationship building piece, that we weren't going to be doing a whole lot of testing in the first week anyway, and we didn't want to push it because our kids have been through a lot, so.
So I guess you may meet just prior to that 1st September meeting, but one of those meetings will probably time out well for another report decision.
Any other board questions? Okay. Thank you to all 3 of you for coming in.
And all you're doing.
Appreciate
Sorry you
it.
had to wait for a while.
No, that's
all right.
I got to be up there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, the next presentation will be the Return to Learn plan.
Just have a little overview for you here to hit some of the highlights, some of the key issues, and then we have different things linked here as well. To begin with, just a little rundown of who our main guidance sources were. You got a flavor tonight, of the different sources that we have tried to rely on: the Iowa Department of Education, Iowa Department of Public Health, the CDC, Warren County Health Services, American Academy of Pediatrics, other professional organizations. And then, as you've heard, we've had several surveys and many people reach out with input too. So there has been a lot of information, a lot of thought. Just a reminder, a caveat to start with, I think everybody understands this. Really all aspects of this plan are subject to change at any moment. Situations arise, new guidance can come very quickly. A good example, just this past Friday with the governor's proclamation, that is not in conflict with anything that we are recommending, but I know there are districts which are having to kind of go back to the drawing board or seek additional approvals or make some changes. We are very much needing to be responsive to guidance we get. So that's just a good reminder. The areas that are in the plan are mentioned here. We've had different planning teams, and there is the link to the full plan, which will be live, so people can go through that and see, many different levels of detail you can drill down on, by building, by different area of concern there. I think a lot of the kinds of questions that I've heard raised, people can gain some insight to just by spending some time in the plan here. So we are not going to walk through that entire plan tonight. I picked out a few of the leading concerns that we really need to have the board decide on, and some things that we made recommendations on tonight. But the full plan is there, and as we've said, is subject to change. We'll continue to work on it in response to what we learn. And as we begin to get back to school, we're going to learn some lessons. The virus may do things we haven't expected, so we're just going to have to be flexible. I know that word was cited in one of the public comments we heard tonight. That's going to be important for everybody.
Do you feel like when you've heard all these comments that some of the things that kept kind of coming up, like what are our guidelines for, the sick days? I mean, there were some common themes. Do you feel like all that's addressed in here, or we need to go back?
I think a lot of it is, but we'll review those comments. Some of the measures, what are you going to do if,
Right.
Are still in the planning phase as we work with Warren County Health Services, for example, in developing specific metrics. I think it's safe to assume we're going to have positive cases, we're going to have exposures, regardless of mitigation. So we are talking about things, the leaves, a lot of those kind of employment type things. I'm sure there will be follow-up communications from Ms. Kelly, and I actually just talked about it this morning in terms of some of the communications that come from our HR department. So I think a lot of those things are addressed on some level, and then people's individual situations can change too. There are going to be specific situations that come up that we're going to have to navigate with people. One of the surveys here, one of the first ones we did, is just captured here, and then there's a link to the full survey there. In June 2020, we did a survey that focused on remote learning, and I want to emphasize for everybody that last spring, where we had voluntary remote learning, that's a much different approach, a much different ballgame than required remote learning. So it will be a different experience. But on this survey, we had over 1,400 parent responses, 144 teacher responses, 546 student responses. Those are students grades 6 through 12. And there were common emphases that came out of those replies, those surveys, remote learning priorities, and I have some of those bulleted there. Really important to the students that we have consistency of interaction. A really large number of students said that they wanted a schedule, they wanted to know the assignments, having weekly and daily emphases. What really came through clearly in the comments too was just how much they appreciated the instruction that they got from teachers, even in the voluntary setting. So as we go to required remote learning, that's going to be very important. Interactions with other students and their teachers was something that they prized. On the teacher side, our teachers talked a lot about student engagement too, about that being something that's very important, and a conducive learning environment at home. Remote learning is different. And then access to materials as well is something we've talked about a lot. So that's a very quick summary of that particular survey, but the full survey is linked there. We had a recent parent survey, July 2020, and as you've already heard, we did not include other as a selection on this short survey, or options that some would prefer. For example, we didn't put in there 5 full face-to-face days of learning. We didn't put in there face coverings required pre-K-12 for students. So not having those can affect results statistically if you're looking at it in terms of statistical reliability for a survey. But we really wanted to hone in on a couple of key considerations and things we were considering to recommend, so that there was a method to our madness there. We wanted kind of a quick and dirty picture on a few key issues, which we got. You notice we got 2,142 responses, and this was a short time frame, Ray. We had it open 3 or 4 days. Yeah, 3 days. So one question was, which of these policies do you favor with regard to face coverings for students? And of those 2,142 responses, 54.2% said allowed but not required for pre-K-12. 45.8% said allowed but not required for preschool through 5th and required for 6th through 12th. We did ask about instructional models as well. And again, the assumption was that we were going to have some kind of remote option. And that if we were going to have a remote option, we needed to give some additional time to prepare and deliver that. So we did ask those questions. The first one, 47.7% said they would prefer to send their students to school for 5 shortened days with face coverings allowed but not required for grades pre-K-12. 29.7% said they would prefer to send their students to school for 5 shortened days with face coverings allowed but not required for grades preschool through 5th and required for 6th through 12th. And then 22.6% said that they would prefer to have their students learn remotely from home, regardless of the face coverings. That number is fairly consistent with what we heard from an Irving survey earlier this year. It's also consistent with what I've heard from some other districts. That seems to be kind of a common threshold, that low 20-some% of people who, regardless of the circumstances, aren't quite comfortable having students come back to school yet. More recently, we did a staff survey last Friday. I mentioned that earlier survey was really focused on instruction. This was more of a safety work conditions type survey. We had 430 responses from staff on this. Again, a short time frame. This was open. What was it, Amy?
Friday, and then I pulled the data this morning.
Okay, so just introduce the end of last week and then close this morning. So a short time frame, but good responses. You can see there 37.9% preferred face-to-face in the classroom, 25.8% preferred some kind of a combination of classroom and partially remote, 20.5% favored totally virtual or virtual using technology. The NA captures other comments, different answers of a wide variety.
Yes, this is, so that would be maybe bus drivers and facilities folks that aren't specifically serving students. So that's the other category for this one.
So this survey, those answers come from not just the instructional staff, but bus drivers and everybody,
Yep,
okay?
associates and everybody.
So we never had, and I think you pointed that, but up above, it's like we unfortunately never really asked the face covering or not face covering. It was always the categories that we were considering at the time.
That's true.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's too bad, I think, in retrospect, because that's kind of where all the emotion is, I think. A lot of it is. I'm just saying, hindsight is 20/20, I get that, but.
Well, in terms of recommendation coming from the district leadership team and what we've seen happening with the virus, and again, I refer to the people we look to for guidance. I think we were going to recommend face coverings in some way. Now, whether that was voluntary or required for what grade levels, that's kind of where the differentiation takes place. I would not have been part of a recommendation. We would have had lots and lots of conversation, I'm sure, on our leadership team. I would not have brought forward as an option, not at least encouraging it for people who wanted to. So, and I wouldn't see it as an option of prohibiting it for somebody who wanted to wear one. So, I guess that did inform what we asked questions about. We also asked a question about face coverings in a couple of different ways for staff. One, their personal face coverings. We did not survey teachers, we did not survey parents, for example, on teacher face coverings. We focused on the students, but teachers, they both are going to, have their own personal usage, as well as have an opinion on that of students. And so we asked the question 2 different ways. With regard to personal face covering in an in-school setting, 44.6% of teachers prefer to wear a face covering. That would be all the time. And then we We changed the question a little bit there. I prefer to wear a face covering when physical distancing cannot be achieved, which is going to be tough in a school setting. That was 35.9%. And then 15.4% preferred not to wear a face covering at all. The other on this, Mimi?
Yeah, this is where they made a comment, so I left it open and they could write any comment they wanted. So, you know, maybe they said if students are in the class all the time, or if, there were lots of different
So
kinds of
different
comments,
scenarios
but yeah,
that-
that
okay.
didn't really fall into any of those buckets.
Yeah. With regard to how staff feels about student face covering, 40.2% prefer that students wear face covering, just require it. 36.6% prefer students wear a face covering when physical distancing cannot be achieved, and then 17.2% prefer that students not wear a face covering. District recommendations, you know, I've kind of weaved a little bit of this into it, but on face coverings, the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics, you know, they will recommend face coverings for people 2 years and up, 2 years old and up if worn correctly. You know, and then you kind of get into debates about that. I've shared my personal rationale or thinking and where the leadership team was in some previous video updates. And that included some change over time as we saw some things happening in the local area, the county, as sports resumed. There are very different opinions on this, of course. So when this says district recommendations, this is the consensus of the leadership team that's working on planning. I'm going to go through each one of these. You know, some will require more attention, probably, or conversation. You know, we are recommending as a leadership team that we require staff to wear face coverings when physical distancing cannot be achieved. And that last bit of language really I've added in there recently. I think that would probably be pretty large percentage of time in a public school. But there would be times, for example, you're working alone in an office, you're in a small group meeting where you can have some distance. You are in a situation where you can be physically distanced. I want to allow a little bit of, I guess, flexibility within that. Another recommendation, which we've talked about, and this has people, as you've heard from the survey data from the comments, this has people quite divided. But this is the recommendation of our leadership team right now, and it's mainly a recognition that, as some of the research shows, you heard some people call it into question, that younger children are less likely to contract and transmit, older children more likely, adults even more likely and more at risk. That's what the CDC says. So the recommendation is to have students in grades 6 through 12, along with all staff, required to wear face covering when physical distancing cannot be achieved. And again, there could be situations outdoors, for example, maybe a PE setting where people are spread out. That's another finding, is that outdoors transmission is less likely. There could be situations where they don't need to be, but that's our recommendation. We would have to have some kind of a medical waiver. I've looked a little bit at the waiver that the Iowa Department of Public Health has for immunizations. You couldn't take that exactly, but you could take that concept, I think, and have a medical person sign off on it. So those are the recommendations for required mask wearing. Recommendation also, which again, some people feel very strongly that it should be required preschool, everybody. Okay, and there are others who feel equally strongly that it shouldn't be required for anybody. The recommendation of the leadership team is that students in grades preschool through 5 would be optional but encouraged to wear face coverings. We would be reliant on parents working with their kids and making sure that they were handled it the right way if that was a decision. Do you want to pause after face coverings? Or you want me to keep on trucking through all this and then go back through and talk?
Let's go through it all, and then then we'll let the board kind of go through
Sounds great.
together.
Okay. On-site instruction, as you've been hearing, the American Academy of Pediatrics said you should start with the goal of getting students back on-site learning. Okay, and that is where my personal mindset has been too. I know you've heard expressed very strongly. Other thoughts, you know, that remote learning is the only safe way to do it. We've had the recent governor's proclamation too, which assures that we're going to be back a good portion of the time, majority of the time. But the plan that we're recommending already met the governor's proclamation. We're recommending on-site instruction 5 days a week. That in itself is not the kind of hybrid that has kids come on an A-B day and reduces the numbers or something. We do know, as we've heard tonight, we anticipate that 20% or more of our students will be home learning remotely. That will reduce the numbers a little bit already. And we're looking at things we can do within the school day to help also. But we're recommending on-site 5 days a week with a 90-minute early dismissal every day, including Wednesdays, so Wednesday wouldn't be another hour earlier, you know, in case that question comes up. I do want to, well, that's horrible, I see a typo in here.
Did you say it would or would not be for Wednesdays?
It would not be an additional hour.
So
It would be 90 minutes, and I would say 1:30, except dismissal times vary a little building to building, so it's 90 minutes early, which is roughly 1:30.
But whatever that building is, it is Monday through Friday.
Right, that's the plan, and we think that's necessary. You heard a lot about kind of increased workload on teachers. Face-to-face instruction and remote instruction are very different animals. And you also heard from one of the parents express a desire for synchronous online learning, you know, actual like live face-to-face online time. Now, you can't have the same person, you know, do both at the same time all throughout the day, but there would be some time then to deliver some plan and deliver online instruction. This would be in addition to planning time that teachers might already have, and that 90 minutes we think would help with the online component. We are sensitive to the whole idea of learning gaps, trying to catch up, whatever, but right now the goal has to be get kids back in the groove, start doing some assessing about where we're at. As Mrs. Durant said, teachers are already aware of where potential learning gaps are and talking about how to address it. And this is something that, you know, that I want to reevaluate. I don't know what is going to happen with the virus. It could be if we get off to a great start and we turn a corner and we're doing wonderfully, you know, maybe we can go back all day, 5 days a week with some kind of online component that might differ, but with the expectation that more of our kids could come back. I don't know.
Art, that's a good question.
Sure.
So their choice is if they come to school and they do the 5 days a week minus the 90 minutes every day, or they homeschool.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, homeschool. There's not like a full-time remote, it's homeschool. Right? I mean, how does that kind of?
Homeschool has a very
That's
specific
different.
legal definition, so I wouldn't use that term. I would call it remote learning or continuous.
So we're
required.
supporting 100% remote learning for all grades? We're going to?
Do we know, are we going to be presented is the board going to be presented exactly how many kids have made that decision?
Yes, there'll be a simple process by which parents let their principals know, and we'll set a deadline on that.
So not every teacher will have a student that's remotely learning. Could or could be.
Yeah, could or could not, you're exactly right.
But we'll have those numbers once traditional starts.
We'll need to know that prior to the start of school, and we'll try to.
Yeah, Derek and I have been working on a form for him to actually send out tomorrow, a Google form where they can indicate what children are attending Irving, what grade level, and what their intent is for each child. And if that goes well, we can copy that for the other buildings so they can send that out within the week.
So then we'll know. Okay.
But we probably need to be careful of what people understand they're choosing.
Right. So
Like
there's
what
a
homeschooling is, what remote learning is, because we still get money for remote learning. per
Absolutely,
this-
those are
okay.
our students we're delivering.
Homeschooling, we don't. They're on their own, so to speak, to kind of find what they want to do.
The
and
survey
all that.
essentially addresses whether they want to have on-site learning or if they're going for the continuous learning remote, which is online. And so there's a brief
Yeah,
description
homeschool's a
of
whole
if this
different
is what
ballgame.
you choose to move towards. I mean, that's just all draft, depending on what you decide this evening.
Yeah, homeschool is not, we don't even deal with homeschooling.
No, I know that. I'm just saying,
Oh,
I'm just trying to differentiate, like, is every teacher going to do, or is every grade has an online curriculum?
So it varies from elementary to high school because elementary is more self-contained within a classroom, but they might share their duties as to who's doing the planning for online for particular subjects. But the push is to have each teacher personalize it. Their kids want to see their teacher. They want to see their face. So and that was in part of their training, even if they use an instructional video from YouTube, maybe it's a teacher still building their skills, they would still be doing introductions, they would still be doing their assessments. So they might share some of that instruction online, but they also have this time to conduct Zoom meetings, to do some Zooming with the kids and do instruction in that way too. At the secondary level, those teachers are going to have a lot of input on how they rotate some of their courses. If they're teaching, for example, 4 different courses, they might have a different type of schedule as to when that instruction is taking place and when those Zoom meetings will be taking place, and how they record those so kids can view those later on also.
And we'll let people flip around, like, maybe they start out, the virus starts they get less comfortable because we're having cases, they could jump to the other.
The intention is to ask of parents to allow for 2 weeks, because then that would, in conversations with their principals, allow them to take a look at, do we have to rearrange the seating to provide more social distancing? Do the bus department need to take a look at their transportation pieces? But if that's not possible, we certainly want the kids coming back if they need to. And we certainly know too that if there are cases of COVID, those kids would be switching to remote the next day. So
So if they're quarantined, they can switch to the remote and
Right.
just keep going.
Some districts have asked for commitments for the semester, and we feel like that's just too long. We need to be flexible for the parents. Some parents might get called back to work and be given maybe a 2-week notice. And so there will be case-by-case basis, but if parents can at least allow 2 weeks, that allows for more planning on site too. So.
That was my question, just that there would be a commitment, so we're not gonna have parents that say, well, I have 2 days off, so I'll just keep my kid home and do that. Whatever they choose, they gotta stick with that for the committed time period, right?
Yeah, we can't, whether it's attendance codes or just continuity of instruction, we can't have a situation where high school kid wakes up late and I'll just do remote today, or like you say, parents where they want a certain day a week or something. We want to be flexible. We can't cut it that fine and do a quality job.
That gets into that line of dual enrollment.
Right.
Actually, as a consideration instead of continuous learning.
Now, is there concern or has it been discussed that, unlike last year, our teachers had an established relationship with their students, so the online learning probably went a little smoother. We're coming into a new school year where students might not even know their teacher. Has that concern been discussed, how they'll go if they choose the online format?
There's some of those pieces in there as far as strategies in terms of, how some teachers have norms that they do in their classroom, like here's our warm-up that we always do, or there's a student of the day who shares something. That's a strategy that teachers can be using online to form that community of learners online also. But then also within that 90 minutes, as they need some flexibility too to determine, I need to make 5 phone calls to these kids today, or I might need a one-to-one Zoom session with those kids. There's a variety of ways that they can try to make those connections, but that is definitely a concern on that social, emotional, behavioral health needs of kids.
And then another concern I think of right now too, just making sure it's been addressed, say one particular teacher has 70% of their classroom that says I want to do online learning, and another teacher has a full class that says I want to come to the building. How's that workload going to be? Is it really fair to the one teacher who just has to teach their full class all day and then the other has to teach half a class and then half a class online? Is that a contingency plan been established to help
So once we get those numbers, for example, Derek has been looking at that and seeing just those ideas of can one teacher be the online instructor in some way and do more Zooms throughout the day or do more of that planning. At the elementary level, that may be a little bit more easily done, and at the middle school where you have common coursework. When you get to the high school, oftentimes you have more specialty areas and AP courses and things like that. And you also have to take a look at certifications. We wouldn't want a teacher instructing something that they're not certified to teach. But yes, and that's that whole fluid piece to this is the numbers at one building could look very different than another one, or even grade level to grade level. In this past spring, there was a lot of collaboration across the grades, similar grades in the district. So once Irving starts, they won't be at the same point in their curriculum as the other three elementaries, but the other three elementaries would still have an opportunity perhaps to utilize some of their instruction that they had already prepared and or still continue collaborating together across the three traditional calendar elementaries too. So that's that part where when teachers, once a model is determined by the school board, we can then start saying, okay, now let's really dig in and say what are the pros and cons of things and what are those types of collaboration pieces that can get shared and get their ideas on that.
It'd be nice if they could share it so that, the same people, one teacher wasn't, one of the three or four could teach the lesson for that day that's, being really remotely. There's no reason for all of them to do it.
And they can do lead-ins. There's, for that rapid transition to online learning that they had this spring, it's perfectly acceptable to be doing that. It's just that there has to be a focus of getting your face and connecting with the kids too, because they need
Right,
that.
I'm just saying, but if they alternate it, they'll
Yeah.
all see them. Is there any way, like in the high school, that if someone's giving a bio lecture or something, that they can tune into that live, or is that not possible? I don't know, I'm just asking.
Yeah, we've talked about it. The two main concerns with that seem to be potential privacy issues, because you're showing the classroom potentially to the home or whatever. And the other one is just more kind of a nuts and bolts thing, the sound quality sometimes of it. So those are things we've talked about. We have, and Annette earlier talked about the flexibility of teachers, being able to decide what to do at that time. If we can get it recorded, maybe it's even a teacher giving notes or whatever, to an empty room, but now we've got it recorded and the kid can watch it whenever.
Yeah.
But there could be times, there could group Zooms when you have, a group of remote learners together doing it then, or, I think we continue to look at that potential of maybe if we're letting somebody remote watch live in the classroom, maybe we can limit the field of view to the immediate area up front, the teacher and the board
Yeah, I
or
was just
something.
gonna say, if you only
Maybe we can figure
show
out
the
the
teacher,
sound.
yeah, that's, I
So,
know, I know
I-
you couldn't show the whole classroom, I
Yeah,
understand that.
right now, we're not at a point of ruling anything out. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
those,
just was curious, I don't know, I was just curious.
yeah,
And that
those,
part is written in the plan currently as far as limiting the viewpoint of it. But we're gonna have to take a look and see, again, what does the sound look like? But that option is in there currently, based too on the teacher's comfort level as to where they're at handling all that, so.
Thank you.
As you developed this plan, did you get input from the teachers? Do the teachers feel like 90 minutes isn't enough? If I understand it right, I think contractually they have like a certain amount of time at the end of every day where it's typically spent planning for the next day. Is this 90 minutes of online instruction enough, or did you get input from the teachers on that?
planning time's not a contractual thing. You heard the 30-minute duty-free lunch referred to.
Okay, that's what.
And that is contractual. And what we heard from principals was that we do have staff that's on duty at lunches that can help supervise, for example, so the teachers will have duty-free lunch. Is it enough time? I don't know. There's a balance because planning time, you're taking away from instructional time. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but in terms of teacher input.
90 minutes wasn't floated out there in terms of, do you agree with this or not? But the feedback through this teacher survey was so strong about, we need to have clarity of what we're focusing in on and time to do it. And if you bump it up any more, you're going to start running into lunch times. And another consideration was making sure we could feed the kids accurately every day before they went home. So the 90 minutes was coming in addition to the regular planning time. for that. I know an hour was talked about, and I just don't see that as being feasible with trying to make connections remotely, to record, to collaborate with your colleagues on your instruction. And I think that's also something that we'd have to take a look at to see, is that working or not? As a lot of, other parts to the plan will be that same way.
But there was input as you guys worked on this from the teachers and as far as how they thought that would work.
The 90 minutes?
Yeah, as far as the online instruction on top of classroom instruction.
Yes, because we're required to have a hybrid plan. And so for the collaboration and innovation teachers, I sent out to them that section of the plan as far as not if it was a daily dismissal piece, because that's the scenarios that Art is taking a look at, but they took a look at the teaching expectations of a hybrid plan and asked those questions and gave feedback on all of those pieces. Is that the part of the plan that you're asking about for teacher input on?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, that as we were developing this plan, there was input and continuous dialogue with the teachers who are going to be the ones asked to implement it, that's all.
Well, some of the things that they've been doing in addition to the survey, I know Derek Morris has been working with them on the GT portion. He oversees their GT plan. I have a piece of all the K2 teachers. They have been giving input on supplies that those kids might need, like a to-go learning kit where those kids could take manipulatives and things home. So the K2 teachers have been putting all that information in spreadsheets. Again, the C&I teachers, they went over the hybrid expectations. What would your questions be, concerns? The nurses and the custodians have been working with Bernie Brick. The counselors have been putting together a presentation and looking at social emotional behavior supports throughout the year. The TLC committee has met together to take a look at how can instructional coaches be used differently for those supports. Sarah Baker, the new special programs director, has been reaching out to the special ed teachers and surveying them and getting information about their programs as to what they would need based on what's in the plan. Our music team, Heidi Terrell is the contact for that. They've been studying the National Music Association's reports on aerosol distribution, and we have their recommendations in working with their principals, and they'll be working with Bernie, for example, on figuring out the HVAC system and how that works with those large classes that have a lot of breathing. I've been working with Will Naylor for PE, also sending them some supports and things from Minnesota State on how do you modify PE for remote online. The family consumer science teachers, we haven't had an exchange yet except for resources specific to family consumer science that could help them out. And Stacy Evans, she had surveyed and is working with the new teachers to the district on their technology needs, and we've been infusing that into their orientation program. So those are just things off the top of my head when I was coming in thinking, this has been such a large plan with lots of details, and it's extremely important that we have everybody involved in different ways. And those were just a few that, so far as to where we're at, that's been involvement with different teachers and people around the district. So
A stance like Zoom versus Teams, because I know Zoom is kind of criticized for security. Are we like endorsing something? And then the next step I was thinking, I've never done it, but I've heard I don't know if it was Zoom or Teams, but but anyway, you can do things where you're in a group and then you automatically break off into other groups. So in older classes, you could have a lecture and then break off into subgroups that are working on projects, and a teacher could kind of bounce between them, and it just happens automatic. Are we teaching them technology like that they could use, and are we endorsing one method versus another with some of the...
Well, Ray can talk a little bit about why we've been focusing in on Zoom, but Ali Sauter did provide trainings and one-to-one sessions with people. They did have a lot of training videos sent to them about Zoom also.
Okay.
We're trying to personalize things moving forward even more. So that's why a teacher online resources site is being developed. It's kind of a class pages for teachers where all of those trainings and information will be located there so they can self-select. We're going to be having breakout sessions for teachers that we had a lot of positive feedback on what she did this spring to continue those types of trainings too. And so yes, technology strategies and how do you do that will be included, but Ray can probably speak more to Zoom versus Google
I
Hangouts.
just, the only thing I'll add there is that is, in addition to the training that we've given them, you mentioned the security piece, and that was addressed early on by Zoom, but also by training and information put out to our teachers on how to make sure their Zoom rooms are secure, rather it be by admitting students as they join or having a code to join a class.
I mentioned too that as we look through the survey data from students, they really appreciated the Zoom meetings and wanted more. I mean, that was one of the positives from the voluntary learning last spring that was mentioned over and over.
And I will say, I do think it's good for our district, our parents and our students and our teachers to be consistent on using one platform so that they know how to join.
Well, and I think too, as you guys were reading, and some of those were teachers in the comments today, just stuff I've heard, I think communication is going to be huge. I mean, huge. Like almost over communicating to teachers, parents. I mean, it's going to be extremely important that we're communicating all the time, because obviously that was a big point in the stuff Art and Rob were reading. I just think we got to overemphasize our communication.
If you guys are okay, what I'd like to do is have the administrators continue with the plan, presenting the plan. And if you guys can, as board members, we'll write down any extra questions we have so they can get through, just in case something may be answered by your guys' presentation.
Yeah, I did sort of front load some of the bigger pieces, so I mean so some of the others will go pretty quickly.
It's okay.
I put in here as a bullet point previously approved calendar. If we were going to go some other dates that would take board action. Right now we are planning for August 4th year-round, August 25th traditional. I have received a couple of suggestions from people that just again because of uncertainty about the virus and what seems to be happening with some cases, I have had people suggest not doing year-round August 4th, but moving it back to the traditional. The board did already take action to move that from July 9th to August 4th, which at the time Warren County Health Services was comfortable with. So, but just for your information, I want you to know I'd had that mentioned. Transportation we've talked about as well. The bullet point says buses will run at full capacity. That's not strictly accurate because when you read capacity 77 on a bus, we won't have that 3 to a seat type phenomenon. When we start with Irving, it will be 1 student per seat with the seat behind the driver empty. Once we go to traditional, 2 students per seat with the seat behind the driver empty. And also that'll be separated by grade levels, siblings together, that kind of thing I think you've heard Mr. Swartz do some reporting on. But we are recommending that we require face covering while riding the bus just because they will be in close proximity for an extended period of time without any movement there. Other things that are within the transportation recommendations, have the windows open when you can for some airflow, that kind of thing. Sanitizing the bus after the route, that'll be part of the post-trip inspection. Those are the kinds of details that are in the plan that I don't have in here as recommendations tonight, but I wanted to mention.
But when you say like at the end of the route, it's like when you're done. So if they had a double route, there's nothing in between, which I get.
Yeah, that would be true. I think that if they're doing any looping, now this level of ridership I think will help us prevent having to loop. When Ron talked about looping, that was if we limited it to 25 students a bus.
Okay.
Versus this will be 49. If you're able to do 2 in a
But sometimes I'm just saying, I think the reality is like if someone gets dropped off and they reload, there's no cleaning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I understand you can't do it. I just want to be clear about that.
Yep, exactly. We have talked about not allowing visitors in school buildings until October 1st, just till we see what happens here with the virus in the fall. We're asking parents, students, staff, everybody to monitor themselves for symptoms, to stay home if you're sick or exhibiting symptoms. I've mentioned before, we do have the ability to do temperature checks. We've got about 250 touchless thermometers. I did not put that in here as a hard and fast rule or recommendation because that may vary a little bit at the different levels. I think it would be fairly easy for an elementary classroom to do that. first hour, for example, right away with the kids. That'd get a little tougher, middle school, high school. If I said first hour, and you have 145 band students first hour or something, that wouldn't be practical. So I haven't gotten into the weeds here, but I want you to know that we're asking people to self-monitor, and we have the ability to do some monitoring too. We will isolate students or staff who are exhibiting symptoms. They'll be assessed. We have health offices in every building. We've hired an additional district nurse this year. And, if they have a fever over 100.4 or have, any fever or other combination of symptoms, the determination is made they need to leave, we'll get those people out of there as soon as possible, and we'll segregate them from other people. We're going to do physical distancing whenever, however we can. Even the guidance that you hear from the CDC, for example, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they'll talk about 6 feet. Then the American Academy of Pediatrics will say, we recognize that's going to be tough in a school, and 3 feet might be adequate distance. The CDC, with their guidelines, they often say, as practical. So we're going to do the best we can with that. We're going to try to use cohort groups when we can. We're going to have signage reminding people. We're going to be attentive to it. We're going to try to stay away from common areas, shared materials. Again, we're getting into plan details, but we're going to do the best we can with that, understanding that's extremely difficult in a school setting. And then there'll be increased emphasis on hygiene, sanitation. Again, there are details in the plan, but some of the simplest things are the best, just hand washing. We're adding hand sanitizing stations. We're looking at paper towels versus air dryers. Looking at additional cleaning of high-touch surfaces.
Art, I want to go back to visitor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Visitors. What do we consider a visitor?
Well,
Anybody?
About the only exception we have to that right now is where we have student teaching agreements, where we're going to allow student teachers to come, but they won't be in one day out the next. They'll be there, every day. We've talked about this will be painful. The elementary principals brought it up. First day of school, parents are used to walking their kids back to the classroom. We're not planning on allowing that.
Yeah.
We're not planning on allowing, at least at the beginning of the school year, grandma to come eat lunch with Johnny.
How about reading volunteers and stuff?
Classroom volunteers, we're going to be limiting, at least right out of the gate. We've talked about an October 1st date. I've told one of our higher ed institutions that we cooperate with, I've said, we don't want field experienced students, who are in one day and out. What we're reading about in terms of exposure is if you keep that consistent group together as much as possible and not introduce, occasional outside people, that's what we're going to try to do. And we'll just have to see how it goes.
This one might be a stupid one, but what we say for our teachers automatically applies to any AEA personnel that come in our building.
Yes, yeah, exactly right. If we're requiring face coverings of adults or staff, for example, that would apply to AEA staff, absolutely.
As far as the visitors go, what about students who have unique, medical issues that have had, parents have maybe regularly visited? Would that be an exception?
Yeah, I think we'd have to balance, and I don't think I said it out loud, but there's a bullet point up there on transportation, for example. There will be special needs kids for whom face coverings aren't going to work. Well, our special needs buses, we can distance them anyway, so we'll be okay. Well, we have to balance that with special needs students. If a parent needs to be involved, there have been multiple situations in the past, for example, with intense medical needs where it's very helpful for a parent to be there early in the year, maybe work with an associate, with a school nurse. We're going to have to use common sense in some of those situations. There are things we have to weigh throughout all this. There's a note there. These aren't recommendations so much as reminders. The last page of this this little presentation here on contingency planning. Just a reminder to people, we are going to work closely with Warren County Health Services. They will help us with contact tracing, COVID-19 positive cases. You know, it will come down to if there's a positive, trying to trace who has had close personal contact with that person, which is typically defined as 6 feet or less for 15 minutes or more. And then
This will be the responsibility of Warren County Health, not us.
Warren County Health, we'll take our direction from, we'll work cooperatively with them.
It's their responsibility.
Yeah, and they will be responsive. I know they've been absolutely great this summer as activities have ramped up and as things have come up. Our activities director calls them immediately. And likewise on the notification, you know, we may hear something informally sometime, but the notification will come from public health to us about a positive case. But there are all kinds of little things that parents, I know this is going through their mind already, the contingency planning they're going to have to do. What are you going to do if you have a school-aged child that has to stay home in quarantine for 14 days due to an exposure or positive test? What are you going to do if, this question came up earlier, we could have remote learning at the classroom level, at the building level, or at the district level, depending on what happens with the virus. And back to that idea of flexibility again. What are you going to do if your child care facility has to shut down? So, you know, that last bullet, we'll try to do anything we can to help anybody, but I don't think there's any way that the school district is going to be able to solve everybody's issues or provide everything everybody needs.
I think we have to provide a little more, not tonight, of the what-if scenario. Kind of saying, if a youngster tests positive in a classroom, this is our probable thing.
Yeah.
You know, so people have some idea, because I'm getting the question a lot, what are you going to do if this, what are you going to do if that?
And within the
if we
plan,
get a little more out there, I think it'd help.
okay, and within the plan, we you know have said what we're pretty definite of right now. The bigger piece that Warren County Health Services is working on metrics with Warren County superintendents in terms of what would trigger a building closure, a school closure. Don't have those specific numbers. I can tell you, based on experience from activities this summer, that if a student tests positive or has been in close contact with somebody who's positive, a 14-day quarantine is the norm. So, you know, that's something I would be comfortable putting out there right now. So in terms of when you get what if questions, what if my child tests positive, they're probably going to be
I think the question is more, what if somebody else, nobody thinks their kid's going to get it, what if somebody else's kid tests positive? Is my kid's class still going on?
Yeah, well, we have to determine that, whether that close personal contact took place or not.
Is the governor, when she said something, she said in August 4th, she's gonna come out with more details about that?
Yeah.
That included, is that we'll follow her guidelines or?
We will. I mean, we have been following the guidance of the Department of Education, the governor, the Iowa Department of Public Health, Warren County Health Services. So, yeah, that's a great example of why we start right up front. You know, this plan could change based on that guidance, definitely. So that's about as high-level an overview as I could give. But again, people are going to want to get in, you know, click and get in and get more detail. We'll definitely continue sharing more details as we go. But those were things that I felt I needed to get in front of the board tonight, so we can make sure we're on the right path as we're planning, getting ready to open up school.
So what you'd like us to do is those first 2 pages.
Yeah, I would like
Approve those.
I would like the board to approve those recommendations or approve with whatever adaptations you feel you need to make to them.
So I'll dive in and say I am in favor of requiring the face coverings for all grades. And I know it's a hot topic, but I also feel like I'd rather err on the side of doing everything we can to have a continuous or as steady as possible learning experience. And there could be studies saying this, there could be studies saying that, but I just think in the end, I just would feel terrible if, for some reason, us being a little bit looser on the younger kids because of one study that nothing ever really is real definitive one way or the other. And with the teachers and all that, I just feel pretty strongly that we should do everything we can. But other than that, I really like the method that we use. All the other things that we're doing, I think it seems really reasonable. That's the only thing I really call out that I have a comment on.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, and I guess I'll see what you guys all feel in favor of here. I'm not gonna be a dictator here, so thank you, Carolyn, first for sharing that and stuff. I think we owe it to the public to be able to share our thoughts on this and completely, what your feelings are, what if you have any further questions for the administration. So we can either do that one by one, if there's further thoughts and questions, but I think we owe that to the people that have elected us in this position to share those things. Anybody have an objection to that at all?
No, not at all.
Okay. All right. Would anybody like to go first? Would anybody like
I already
to?
did.
Yeah, Carolyn. Anything else, Carolyn?
No, I'm good, I think.
Okay.
Oh, I do, the one thing is, I read one time that I thought was kind of interesting is, I can't remember what state it was, they stamp their elementary kid's hand, and if they wash their hands well, it comes off. They're just trying to teach them, like, you know what I mean, not just they were just talking, I think it was a daycare or some kind of childcare for essential workers, and they have not had infection, and they were kind of saying, some of the things they did were not school because kids stagger in, they don't come all in at once, but they had different things they kind of played around with, and it's been successful.
Was it hand sanitizer or soap and water that it didn't come off with, that it came off with?
I think it
Just
was
curious,
soap and
'cause I've
water.
been
I think
that
it was
used
soap and
both.
water. I think they would go to the restroom, wash your hands.
Right,
So I
because it
assume it's
doesn't
soap
come
and
off
water.
with hand sanitizer some of the time unless they really get it.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought some of the
I
things
just
like
was
that might be
curious.
kind of interesting to look at. I'm done now.
So,
You're okay.
I have a question about, face shields for staff. Are we gonna consider those? I would like to, I guess I would like to bring that to the forefront right now.
And that's, I've been using the word face coverings instead of masks because I think there are some different potential options. Face shields specifically for staff we have talked about. I think in particular the most interest on that I've heard has been from lower elementary where you're doing language acquisition type things, and it's helpful to see, to see how the sounds are formed. I do think potentially we could have staff members who are high risk or just very concerned that would want to wear a mask with a face shield, both. So we're exploring that. I know Mr. Brick is talking to potential vendors on that. If we require face coverings for staff and for students too, I know he has looked at different face coverings. The very cheapest ones appear like they would stretch out right away. So we've looked at a little bit better quality ones. We have talked about for whomever we require face coverings, if anybody, purchasing 2 cloth face coverings, because they're supposed to be washed in that way, at least they would have an opportunity. I also suspect that that a lot of people are going to have their own preferred, comfortable face covering.
I mean, I think a lot of people already have them, but it's nice if they get dirty at school or something.
Absolutely.
happens.
So
it's nice for the teachers to have a supply. I think most people will probably have their own, not everybody though.
I feel like if we require it, we should provide at least some. And I know Mr. Swartz has talked, like with the bus riders, having some smaller size disposable ones available too, if they don't have their own. And then I think particularly the older students, if the languages require face covering, I see a lot of the gaiters around too. The neck gaiters that can just be pulled up then and cover the nose and mouth versus a mask, that's over your ears. So when I've said face coverings, I've tried to keep that door open, but we are definitely looking into the face shields for teachers. I think we might do some kind of surveying, to gauge what the need is before we order X hundreds of them. But I think with the,
I think it'd be cooler to wear that, actually. Than
yeah, I could see it being more comfortable. What I've heard in the reading about face shields and masks too, is that face shields are not thought to be as good at preventing transmission at the source. And if you do get face shields, you should get those that wrap around. And the simple way of what I've heard from that is that when you wear a mask, you're protecting others from you. When you're wearing a shield, you're protecting yourself from others, is one thing I read. So there's probably a school of thought on either one, besides the practical things you're talking about, like comfort, being able to have people see your mouth. So, yeah, definitely something we're looking at.
Anything more, Donna, that you have questions?
Yeah, well, I'm torn here.
If you want to share anything with the board.
Yeah, because I've taught elementary school and I know what a nightmare it will be to deal with masks for little kids. I know what a nightmare will be. On the other hand, I feel like, you know, maybe we should err on the side of caution and say, you know, we'd like you to at least start off the year and see what happens and require it for everybody for the first couple weeks and just see how it goes. I don't know. I feel like we should err on the side of caution in this, but understanding that I have no clue how it will work, because I think it will be very difficult to train kindergartners with all the other things you're doing with them, so, because I've done it.
I am just the opposite. And not to point anybody out, but the ones that have face coverings on here tonight have touched them 131 times and taken them off 6 times. And these are adults. Just, everybody grasp that, because we are grown adults. Touched them 131 times since we've been here.
And what's the difference?
And we're adults. I'm just pointing this out. Let me
Fine.
speak.
Since you're not wearing one, tell
No,
me
but
how that's better than what
Let me
I did
speak.
by
It's
touching
my
it.
turn right now. Let me speak, please. So my thought is, I have 2 kids that I daycare for. One has asthma, who would be very difficult. One that has an anxiety. I daycare for a pediatrician, and I just kind of talk to a lot of people. Being at the Heal House, I've had a lot of people come in volunteer. I would like us to say strongly recommend face coverings, because if you read some of the reports and one of the pediatricians, you know what's going to happen when these kids take off their face masks at the middle school. They're going to go in a bag. Now you've locked all that moisture in there. You've got mold growing by the time they get home. If the parents don't wash them and they put them on the next day, I'm worried about a bacterial lung infection. If we have a kid get that, we're liable, because we are saying you must wear them. So my concern is, I think we strongly recommend it. You know, if teachers want face shields, masks, whatever, we get them provided. Kids want to wear them, that's fine, that's great. I think we strongly recommend it. I'm really nervous about requiring it, because you've already got kids that are stressed out because we're coming back to school. Now you add this to it. I feel really strong. I mean, I want to be safe. Of all means, I want to be safe. I've daycare from day one, from the started. We constantly wash our hands. We constantly sanitize our hands. You know, and, you know, we're very cautious what we do, but we don't run around with face masks all day. And I mean, we tried it. We had a couple of daycares experiment and try to have kids wear them just for 20 minutes. And it was horrible. And they were 6th graders and 7th graders. And so I worry about the stress, the danger of getting a bacterial infection from the stuff that's in the mask that's set in the kids, high school kids' cars. You know, if you require it, that kid's in school for 8 hours and then they go to work at Hy-Vee or Walmart or wherever, you're in it another 4 hours. I don't think there's enough scientific proof that we're not going to have some lasting effects from kids or different problems we're causing by making them wear that mask. So I guess That's my thought. I'm very concerned if we require it, we're gonna cause more problems too.
Any other comments on the rest of the plan?
No, I like the going 5 days, 90 minutes out early.
Okay.
So are you saying all grades then?
I think we recommend it, not
All
a prize. Yeah. I think it needs to be the parent's choice with their child and their doctor.
Ken, Ben, Sue, anybody else like to go next? Sue, go
Okay.
ahead.
I guess I start out with, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. And really, I thank the teachers and the administrators and our families and everything for all the work that they've done. I think at this point in the game, there needs to be a lot of grace. There needs to be a lot of patience. I've talked to, just like everybody on this board, countless teachers, staff, family members, and we kind of solved my issue. I was going to talk about the teachers. I think they have the choice between a mask or a shield or a plexiglass or whatever they feel is going to keep them the safest in their situation, because they all have different ways they run their classroom, and I don't know what that is, and so I would leave that up to them to decide however they most feel safe in the classroom. But I also think at this point in the pandemic, I really think it's time for us, and me included, as families, to turn off the TVs and social media and sit down inside the comforts of their own home and make the decision that is best for their family. Because every family has their own story. Every family has kind of their own things they're dealing with. Being a parent in this district too, we greatly struggled this spring with all the online stuff, but I think it is a very good option for those that aren't ready to bring their kids back. But I think it's a very private and personal decision in the family, and it's a health decision. And I think that we have to honor that with them. In the same conversation, I think we need to have conversations within our own kitchen tables about judgment, because the little girl that's not wearing that mask over there could have severe asthma, and the little boy wearing the mask over there could be a caretaker for his grandparents. So I do think it's a family, and within those conversations, within the walls of your family, that's where you talk about the social distancing and the hand washing. I know when this all started in March that we sent out a very good hand washing video to all the elementary schools and on how proper hygiene was, because my third grader at the time came home and told me word for word what the video said. But I don't think I'm in a position to say your epidemiologist in Columbia is wrong and the epidemiologist in Oxford and his results is right. I don't think we have that right to say these researchers over here are wrong about face masks. No, these researchers over here are wrong. I don't have the right to tell anybody who they research or what they do is wrong. And so I think the decision has to come within the home, and we have to make the best. And I know the decision's complicated. We're gonna have to go home and have the same conversation in our own family with working parents and running the kids back and forth and what we truly believe is best for everyone in our family. But I also think getting these kids in person in the seats will help us better monitor food insecurity, will help us better monitor mental health in our teachers and our families and our students. It's going to keep us, a lot of kids, their safe place is the classroom. And I think that a lot of these kids with some of the socio-emotional behaviors, you put a mask on them and that could go not good. And so again, I don't know who those kids are because it's not my business. And so, I don't know, I believe that Indianola is a very, very supportive and kind community. I think we need to remember at the end of the day in all of this that when we have personal and private decisions to make, we have the freedom to make those. But there's one fact that never changes in all this, is that we're all Indianola. And at the end of the day, we have to be Indianola. Sun rises on the same side of the town, and we all end up in purple and gold. And so I think that it's going to be hard. It's going to be uncharted territory. Decisions for families can come and go, and they can ups and flow through this whole thing. But I believe that when dealing with healthcare, it's a very private and personal matter.
So I want to say one thing, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but kind of to your point, I think it is a decision, but I think not requiring it, more people will lean towards not going to school. And, I'm just saying, and then that's what concerns me is I think more people will lean that way because they're not comfortable with it, and then you don't get the mental health, you don't get the in-school.
And I would say, running a small business, I had an event planned outside, and I had to cancel it, and the concern was they didn't want to wear masks. The majority of my crew, which is a lot of families, I've hosted this event annually. So, again, my research, where I did, because I'm a green personality, and I research to the core. I don't research Facebook. I research general mass and all the 18 to 26 links that they've done on the schools already back in session for 3 months, and what they're seeing in face masks. So that's just, I'm not going to get into the debate of the research over here that says the face masks protect us, because you can have research over here that says they do nothing for us. Even statements from OSHA is very concerned about requiring masks. And so we can't get into that debate, whose research is right, because we don't know.
Anything else, Sue? Okay. Ken or Ben? Ben? Ken?
Talking about everything.
Yeah, whatever you'd like to get across to the board, the community.
One of the things I want
Questions?
to, and I think we all have it as a priority, it'll be an ongoing thing, is the personal safety, personal equipment for our staff, especially for our instructional staff. I think it's here, but I want to make sure that everybody out there notices that's a very important thing to us. We're a corporate board. We get to decide for this community the policy. That's what we got elected to do. Probably wish we hadn't had to face this thing as it goes, which I think transcends a little bit what I would think or what other people think. And I compare it to other decisions I've had to make on the board, that when something comes up that's major, that I have to rely on some experts or something else. The analogy I can use, which is not the same at all, is I was involved with building 2 of the schools here. I didn't research to see which way it was best to build a gymnasium or a classroom. I didn't think it was my right to give the opinions of what I thought the music room should look like. I went out and got the advice of we got the advice of a very experienced architectural firm to do that, experts. I feel the same way here on this board. We're not a health agency. We're not supposed to be, but we're supposed to be responsible. So in this case, the group that I have looked at, the recommendations I have looked at, most of all has been the Pediatric Association, and I followed in line with their recommendations, which is what's being recommended here. They have a lot of members. It's a big group. They deal with children. I want to follow their recommendations.
Anything? Okay. Ben? Thank you, Ken.
Well, first off, just want to thank the administration for your work on this. I think I've made it pretty clear that I think our greatest resource is our staff, including the staff that's in this room. So I was happy to hear that the health and safety of our staff is a priority of yours. I hope as this fluid situation evolves, we can continue to make it a priority and get staff members face shields that might want them, or a plexiglass around their reading table, or whatever they think they need to do their job safest. I hope we can continue to do that. So I was happy to hear that. I think it's been pretty well stated that most experts feel that kids need to be in the classroom, and I agree. I think schools are a fundamentally important part of our life. Kids need the social and emotional health and well-being that comes along with it. The food, the friendships, the camaraderie. Studies have shown that during this time of online learning, an increased cases of child abuse, neglect, all the things that school picks up on that society sometimes leaves off. I think most of all, some of the kids in our community just need that one adult or adults that cares about them. And it's my priority to get our kids back in school. But one statement that stuck out to me as the public comments were read is, it was Lisa's comment, not every family's plan will look the same, and that's okay. And that's why I appreciate that our district has laid out an online option as well for people who don't feel comfortable yet coming to school. So that's kind of where I am. I appreciate the plan. I think the plan was well thought out, and another comment that was made, it's the best plan at this time, I feel. And to echo what Ken said, I fall in line with the American Academy of Pediatrics. They're the experts on it. Their suggestion is face coverings 6 through 12 and highly suggested but not required K through 5, which is what is in our plan, and that is what I support. But I really hope that we can get as many kids back in school as possible and provide the social and emotional health and well-being that they need and deserve. And appreciate the plan that's been put forward by the district.
So are we kind of at 222? Because you guys are saying not for anyone. We're saying we want it for everyone. And you guys are saying follow the plan. So there you go.
I'm ready.
Yeah, you are the deciding vote.
Well, I of course had probably a little bit of an advantage over some of you guys because I was able to read all the comments ahead of time and understand. I've talked to a lot of people on our phone and in person, teachers, family members. I haven't talked to any students except for my own son. But because of that, I took the liberty to write my thoughts down, and so I'd like to read them just like I've read everything else, so might as well continue. Okay.
Any words that you don't know?
Yeah, exactly. Do that to himself. Over the past 7 months of service as a board member, I found my experience to be very challenging and humbling. I strive to do my best to keep the community that I represent at the forefront of my mind in all the decisions I make. This evening, as we prepare to vote on the Return to Learn plan for our district and community, my heart and mind are weighing the feelings, the emotions, and the stories of the families we serve across our community. As board members, we have been handed the incredible task of voting on a plan for which everyone in our community has an opinion. And as we've come to find out, those opinions differ greatly from one person to the next. One thing is for certain, the results of our vote tonight will not make everyone in our community happy, but our job as elected school board members is not to make everyone happy, but instead to make the best decision for the children and the families we serve. Tonight, as I look at our own town, it looks very similar to several other towns around our nation. Indianola is wonderfully filled with families of different ethnic, religious, political, and socioeconomic backgrounds. We're proud of the differences and even more proud of what knits us together. Some 244 years ago, our country was beautifully born from the words of our own Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They are all endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Some 15 years later, our awe-inspiring First Amendment was adopted, ensuring that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Over the past several weeks, these inspiring words have played themselves in my heart and mind, and I respectfully challenge my fellow board members and myself to remember the words of the oath we swore to uphold being sworn into office. Specifically, my heart is torn between the family that sincerely wants to send their child to school wearing a face covering in order to protect themselves and or another loved one at home from sickness and harm, and the family who wishes to send their child to school without wearing a face covering because that child's innocence was stolen from them at a young age, and the thought of wearing a face mask or covering is terrifying and unimaginable, and every single child's story and experience in between. Who am I to judge which situation is of greater value? Who am I to force either family to identify and disclose their child's personal situation to their fellow classmates? Have we allowed ourselves to become so divided that anger, disgust, and judgment are the only emotions and opinions we can summon when we see someone who has opinions and beliefs different from our own? What happened to an individual's right to choose what is best for themselves and their family? What happened to loving our neighbor? What happened to serving our neighbor despite our differences? What example are we as parents and community leaders setting for future generations? I'll end this with a few questions I have lingering in my mind for our administration, for my fellow school board members, and the community we serve. Some of these questions may be answered this evening. Some of them probably already have. However, some of these questions may need to be thought about more in the hearts and minds of everyone here listening tonight. Number one, of the many concerns listed by our valued teachers and staff members, will our administration do their best to address those concerns in a timely manner? Number two, regardless of what scenario a parent chooses for their child from our district Return to Learn plan, will our administration ensure the academic standards set forth by the Iowa Department of Education for all our students is attainable, rigorous, and worthy of their time, commitment, and reasonable expectations? Number three, will our district's parents and community members continue to have great hopes and expectations for their children's education, all while giving grace to those who are doing their best in a very new and ever-changing environment? Number four, how will our district keep private the personal medical conditions and history of our students, teachers, and staff members if a said individual is unable to satisfy the required safety standards set forth by the district? Number five, will members of our entire community do their best to not judge others regardless of their own personal beliefs and feelings, and take the extra step of loving others with different opinions? Finally, if this evening this board chooses to take away, this is my personal opinion, if this board chooses to take away a right of our students, teachers, and staff members, will this board promise to return that right to them as early as possible and when deemed no longer a safety issue? Likewise, will our community promise to hold this board accountable in returning that right as early as possible and when deemed no longer a safety issue? Thank you.
So how'd you vote?
I don't know yet.
Oh. Seems like you're leaning towards let all grades decide what they want to do. That's what my take was from.
I probably lean that way. I probably lean towards letting every single person, staff, teachers, all students, decide that for themselves and their family. A parent making that decision in the case of a student.
Do we need to take the survey results into more consideration? Since we took the time to give them all a chance to vote their opinion, do we need to go back and look at what the survey results were?
We can, but I think we're at the point where it just has ended up at this level. You know, if you look at the 44s to 50-foot, and everything else, it doesn't matter. And I've listened to everything they said, and I've looked at every one of the surveys and all that, and they are important. But it's a point where it's kind of survey the 7 of us that will do it.
Are we looking
I'm
at?
not exactly sure. I just want to follow up with a question. Am I inferring, and you use your own language, which is fine, that if we tell people they have to wear masks, we'll get rid of that as soon as we can? I was having trouble in the last part of your thing.
I
Is
guess
that the
I
right
mean,
that you're talking about us taking away, or?
yeah, I guess I
in
feel,
that area. don't
I
get it.
feel, by us telling somebody that they have to do something, I feel like that's a right of that individual to decide that for themselves. And that's what I was wanting to hear from our board members. If we do decide to, again, my opinion, take that away, will we do our best to return that to them as soon as possible? And I guess I don't know where we look for the recommendation,
No, that's
because
fine.
there's different sides to every
Right.
issue.
As a board member that's for the coverings, yeah, as soon as possible. I'm not too hot about it. Don't do too good with it.
My only concern is, I know there's been several students that have went and got medical notes from their doctor requesting that they do not wear masks. So if the board, which y'all feel like that they should wear masks, how are you going to handle that?
Yeah, I
If you have
personally,
300 and some students that come with notes,
I
you
personally
can't make
feel
them
like-
wear them if the doctor's recommended not to wear them.
I feel like, yeah, even if it's required, we would have to honor a medical note, from a doctor, nurse practitioner, physician's assistant. Those are the three people that.
So if parents
that
have
decide
concerns, that's
for
their
organizations.
next step is to contact their local doctor and discuss it with them then.
When the recommendations came through for required face coverings, did you guys discuss then if a kid forgets theirs at home? Are they dismissed for the day? Does a parent have to come get them
No,
if they're
we talked.
required? I know the Iowa Department of Public Health stated almost 30 questions if you're gonna require masks. As an administrative team, have we answered all those questions?
I can't
Yeah.
authoritatively say, yes, we've got all 30 buttoned up. I looked at that guidance if you decide that. And I think the Department of Ed and the Iowa Department of Public Health both recommended or did not make the recommendation to schools to require it, just because it is complex, like you're saying. It's a lot, there's a lot for districts to consider. And I think some of the concerns that I've heard raised are valid in terms of distraction or potential discipline item. Is it another thing for staff to monitor? I don't have a great answer for some of those things. The bottom line with any of this stuff is we're going to do the best we can with it. If we require it, we're going to try to make sure it happens, unless there's a medical excuse. We're going to appeal to people's responsibility, and you wouldn't have to adopt the exact language. I put a little wiggle room in there at the last second, when physical distancing cannot be achieved, to acknowledge there could be different times when the mask isn't on potentially. Those of you who really favor required mask, you may not want that language in there. So, I do think this was coming into this meeting, I'm not surprised this was the toughest issue and the thing that the board would have to wrestle with. To me, face coverings is one of the toughest because there are radically different opinions about it. You get into rights and responsibilities. Do you have an individual right? Do you have responsibility to others to wear one if you believe they help mitigate? It's just a tough thing to wrestle with. So,
And unfortunately, I don't feel like we really had the survey that, I'm not being critical of it at all, but, we didn't ask what we're looking at. Like, require, don't require, you know what I mean? It's like, it just was never asked to the public.
Well, and again, I guess, yeah,
If we wanted to know what parents thought.
Well, I guess I'd go back to, I think, maybe a version of what Ken said, too. It's not that I don't value public input, but in the end, I knew it was going to be me presenting a recommendation from a leadership team, and it was not going to be in a popular opinion poll, a
And it's probably
majority
gonna be
rule
split anyway if you do
type
it.
thing, and
Yeah.
I did have a sense that it was going to be contentious, split, whatever, so.
I have to say, I don't wear a face mask because it's been recommended that I don't. Because when I got burnt when I was 8,
I understand. I
my lungs were
apologize, but-
torched, so I don't wear a face mask. I do when I go into a store because I know I'm around older people, so I respect that. But I don't wear a face mask just for that reason, is because my lung specialist said a bacterial infection from the mask could kill me. So, you know,
I understand.
it's not the fact that I would not wear a mask, it's the fact that I run a greater risk wearing one.
And I appreciate the language on there at the end of the mask requirement, because there are scenarios where, like in this room, we're all spaced, it's a large open room. There might be times where teachers are meeting in their team at the high school and there's 3 of them in one room and they can be spread out, and it might be an opportunity to take their mask off. So I appreciate that added language at the end of that, because there are times where, you know, I think a teacher could use their judgment on what they need to wear or not. And I like the part in the plan too, where if there is a medical reason, you know, present that to the district, and but I think at the end of the day, I still lean towards what the American Academy of Pediatrics says. That was presented in the plan.
I do have one follow-up question, I guess. How do we get around HIPAA by not identifying somebody with a medical condition if they need a medical note to not wear a mask, and not disclose that to another teacher, to another student?
I've heard that talked about a little bit, and we have started having weekly meetings with Warren County Health Services and Warren County area superintendents, and we talked about that fact a little bit. And you know, HIPAA operates on need to know to a certain extent. So I mean, a teacher wouldn't need to know the specific reason, but they probably would need to know, oh, this student has a medical exemption. They, you know, so they wouldn't have to hassle that kid about wearing a face covering. A comment was made by someone to someone in authority that, you know, there could be times where safety, you know, would temporarily trump HIPAA too. And there wasn't a lot of conversation about that. I'm a little unclear exactly on that concept, but you know, I think it would be similar to what we deal with some privacy things in schools already with FERPA, you know, and privacy records, and most people will understand and accept that if they truly don't need to know, it's not their business. Now, you will get people that feel like they need to know everything, you know, and they might overstep, you know, I don't know, and that would be a conversation between the principal and the staff member. Hopefully we wouldn't have a staff member embarrass a kid or do something improper. I'm pretty sure we'd probably hear about it if it did happen. I mean, that would be the kind of call I could see a principal or me getting. So I do think, you know, on some levels, making it voluntary is easier because you remove some hurdles, you know, in terms of administration of it and some of those things. But I think it comes down to what you as a corporate body think is really the best thing to do. You know, we'll whatever the rules of the game are that we're playing by, we're going to try to do it as well as we can.
And then the questions from our district teachers and staff members. Do you guys have a plan on how to get back with each of those individuals? I know some of them, Kyle, were kind of summary, I guess, but is there a way to reach out to those as employees of the district to help them through all this?
I think one of the good tools that you see done frequently is use of FAQs, you know, kind of frequently asked questions.
Okay.
We can go back, we can capture some of the themes in the HR realm, you know, several of those in terms of like leave questions. And you heard some repetition too as you read that. So that phrase, frequently asked question, is probably appropriate. We probably need to be putting together some communication pieces, FAQs. This planning process has been very intensive, almost all-encompassing, and just keeping up with the individual communications that have come in. And then there are, believe it or not, other things going on that aren't strictly return to learn too. So, you know, I think we just need to keep at it on the communication side of it. Somebody made the comment, I think it was Lori, stressed the importance, you know, even as we get back in the first few weeks, you know, what little pitfalls are we having, and frequent updates. And it may vary a little bit building to building. So I think building principals will probably have a lot of communication with staff and parents alike.
I guess for Carol and for Donna, I think Ben and I are about 2/3 of where you guys are at.
Well,
Any
and I just,
interest in?
you know, I want to say one more thing, and I'm going to shut up. But I taught elementary school. I know exactly how difficult it would be to wear masks. So I'm putting out a plea to the parents of this community. I have teachers calling me in tears, worried about their health, worried about the health of their children at home if they take it home. And so if you have a child who you think is even, you know, of a temperature of 99, or if you've been around family members or anyone that's had this, keep your kids home, because you're not being fair to the teachers of this school district. If you're sending kids to school, and we've had plenty of kids sent to school sick. I mean, every teacher in the world will tell you that. So if we don't require these masks for you, then you need to have respect for the teachers of this district and the staff, the custodians, the cooks, everyone that works there, the associates, and not send your kids to school if you are even remotely thinking they are ill. That's it.
I think maybe to your point, I'd prefer to have this than have it be the entire set of grades. You know what I mean? Like, I understand the pediatricians, I get all that. It's like, that would be my preference, is to go overboard, maybe wait a couple of weeks, wait a month, see if it's a disaster, back off it if we need to. That's not the majority, I understand that. I'm not gonna argue that, you know, that's my opinion only. But as a second choice, it just seems a little, I don't know. I would prefer to go with their recommendation than to say it's open for all grades. Because I just think you do get kind of used to it. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, it is not what you want to do, but you do get kind of used to it. And if it's an option, I think you're just not going to see it. And then it kind of gets into the whole putting risk with teachers. I think there's just going to be kind of a domino effect when stuff starts spreading, because it will.
I think, what I keep going back to, I think this is the best plan at this time. It could change, things could change in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But I think going back to the survey to the Irving students back when we thought they were going to start in July, a lot of them, overwhelming majority, wanted to go back to school. And I think this plan offers that option, and it also offers an online option for people who are more cautious. And like Donna said, I think we all just have to be good human beings and take care of each other and do the right thing, and realize that every family's plan is not going to be the same, and that's okay.
We could reserve the right, like, let's say it does just go crazy, and we still want to keep kids in school as much as possible, and we could revisit this and change it,
Oh,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
I think I would just, as you see the bigger picture of this, I hope we're not entering a slippery slope of requiring people, and down the road requiring them, if you're reading what I'm putting down here, requiring them masks, requiring vaccines, I hope we're not starting that slippery slope of
I still go back, I know
taking
what you're
some
saying,
rights
but
away.
I
That's
feel
all.
like what we're balancing is safety versus the practicality of having kids in school rather than online school. I mean, you know, we're trying to figure out how to make it work.
Right.
Because I do think
Your research
there's
is
that
different than mine,
emotional,
though.
you got the food, you know, the food, the emotional, the mental, I mean, I get all that. So you really do want them in the classroom.
Right.
So you're trying to strike that balance, and there is no easy answer.
How can we say that it's safe for K through 5 for those children not to wear a mask, but it's not safe for 6 through 12?
Well, I don't think we're saying that. I think that's where you rely on the
But our own nurses
American
don't agree with
Academy of
this.
Pediatrics that is basically saying, to Lori's point, that the fact that the kids will probably touch their face more than an older adult or an older child would makes it that the benefits of the mask don't outweigh the negatives that could happen. Is a poor way of summarizing what the American Pediatrics Association
They say it very similar, actually. They say benefits and harms, but same thing you did. That's the conclusion they drew.
And that's my fallback is when I went into this, I promised to listen to people and represent what they wanted, and it's the same here. I don't wear a mask that often, especially when I'm in a large room, but this is what they're saying, and I think as a school board, we have a responsibility to go with that.
Rob, I'd kind of like to take this to the next level. What I'm talking about is putting this in a motion. So let me see if I can do that and get a second. Okay. I move that we adopt the presented plan as printed or described, should I say? As printed?
Yeah,
recommendations as printed?
Recommendations as
I will move that.
Motion made by Ken to approve the district's recommendation for the return to learn plan as provided and as printed on the 2 pages that we have in front of us. And on the
I'll
screens.
second that.
Seconded by Carolyn. Any further discussion by the board? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4 to 3.
Sue?
Roll call.
We'll be sending out a medical form for parents to take to the doctors to get excused notes
we'll
for
need,
wearing masks.
We'll need to make it available, for sure. Like I said, I just started trying to develop that and use the immunization exemption as an example. Not being sure how we were gonna go tonight, I haven't invested tons of time into it.
Something else we need to develop, if a student passes out or gets sick from this, are we responsible, correct? Because we now have required it, it's a mandate.
Well,
Yeah, and I think we need to consult your lawyers too, if they fall, pass out from the mask and hit their head. Since it's a requirement now, I think we need to have that checked into.
Let's go ahead. Let's take just a 2-minute break, you guys, just to take a breath. You guys, we are all doing our best, and that's what we all have to remember. We're all doing our best here. Yeah.
Oops.
And then if you guys, we'll continue with the agenda. Sorry it's taken so long on this.
no, I mean, people deserve a thoughtful consideration. That's what you guys gave it.
I've got neck gaiters, that's what I usually use.
Yeah.
Those aren't too bad, actually.
You have plastic cups in the kitchen there for water.
Yeah, just, and if there's not plastic,
They're styrofoam ones.
one bottle of water, I've got
There's some.
in my office. Yeah, anybody else need a bottle of water?
No, thank you. Water.
Yeah, that's all. I don't have anything better in my office.
Well, surveys were kind of split. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's kind of,
We still are broadcasting, just so you guys know.
yeah.
No, it's on, we're still live, so I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
She's been doing that, yeah, Thursday for lunch, yeah.
I know, I'm so glad.
I don't know, we kind of suggested that to her, like meet in someone's driveway or in the garage.
Maria, you guys have people at Field House.
Sometimes don't see people.
No, we have people at the hotels right now.
So they bring their little lunch. like
Do you haven't
six
anticipated
times in a couple
being
of
able to?
September,
Yeah.
September 1st.
September 1st?
We hope.
I know.
If we don't hit, if we don't hit any more roadblocks.
Yeah.
No, they've been doing it, they like it.
I know, I was really.
A lot
I
of
wouldn't have
legal
said
things to
something
hop
about it.
through, so.
I just felt so bad for Joe, I'd walk by her, because I walk by her house.
Oh, she's just stir crazy, and she's gotten better on her phone.
And you know who to remind us of.
Because, you know, just like, she's digging through closets, because she's cleaning out, so she's like,
I am freezing.
so
It
she's
is so
getting good
cold
about,
in
like,
here.
kind of doing the texting thing, even during the day when we're working, because all the other meetings will like text her back, and, you know.
Well, it's probably good that this is forced to be clean up her house.
Well, and then when she gets finds something, she immediately wants to get rid of it. Like, I'm gonna drop this off. I'm like, Mom, it's 2:00. I'm in a meeting. You do not need to drop off my baby shoes. Oh, no, I just found the baby shoes. I need to drop them. I'm not taking it with me.
It could be fishing. It could be fishing.
Alex got it's a lot of work.
I know. Did you get an anniversary present?
Cards.
I know.
Cold, Lord, you could.
I am freezing.
I know, that's why I wear a jacket, but you could put the coat on.
I know. It's just, I was fine. I got cold.
John, are you cold, warm, hot? You're cold. Oh, good.
We had a meeting in here one day and I had to put my coat on. I was so cold. It was freezing. I don't know what we were doing, but man, it was cold. We got a lot left to go. Rob, we have a lot left to go.
These will be pretty quick.
Yeah, these are kind of beginning of the year things, like who's a lawyer, who's
We'll just
our,
fly through them.
who's gonna jump in quick.
As soon as Art and Sue return, we'll go ahead and get started again.
What's up? Warren County test positive for DT. That'd be interesting to hear.
All right, we will go ahead and get started. And before we do, again, thank you all for sharing your opinions with the administration, with the community, with your fellow board members. For those of us that were on the dissenting side there, dissenting side, I think it's important for us to champion our district's plan and to support it as well as possible, to come out as one board and to champion that, but also, you know, to hold our district responsible, to make sure that the things that were addressed this evening by the people, parents and teachers, you know, that we do our best to make sure we come alongside them. There's no doubt there's a lot of different opinions and things, so thank you so much, you guys. I think that was probably the toughest decision. I really hope that's the toughest decision we all have to ever make in our lives, because I don't know that we can all handle anything else.
But I think during the break, Art got another 10 letters that you have to read.
Did he?
Read
Great.
first.
I did not check.
But I also think it should be a living, breathing plan.
Yeah.
And so as stuff changes, everything, I mean, it's just gonna be fluid.
Yep,
The
absolutely.
politicians say something else, we have to
We could
react and
potentially have a
resist everything.
situation that differs between buildings, like you were
Right.
saying earlier too. So, I mean.
The governor could have done something during our meeting.
Yeah, we don't know. It's true.
All right.
Democrat, Republican.
Let's go ahead and continue. We are to item G, to the Board Curriculum Committee report. For those of you that are on there, I'm assuming the board members have had a chance to review that report. Anything that you guys want to highlight?
we talked about later on, we have to approve a contract. The Bridges Math refresher courses have moved online. So the cost has changed. So we looked at that. We looked at discipline in secondary classrooms. And all the training that everyone's doing is more online. We looked at the Indianola SPLS teacher manual, which is a student personalized learning system, and how each of the students, if we go online, well, am I right in it? If we go online, they'll have like an individualized or personalized learning system.
Those are options that the teachers have through the AEA to complement their content.
Okay. And then, oh yeah, we talked a lot about some of the survey results that had come out, that a lot of we talked about the barriers with some online stuff, and how one thing that they were working on for the new online is that the students really appreciated seeing their teacher give instructions versus just be given something written. And so talked about continuing to educate the teachers on the online system. We talked about every student being trained on Zoom. And one of the surveys that the parents said is more consistent with the class pages, which we kind of have talked a little bit about, the whole Power School stuff. Counselors that are doing that resource. Actually, I don't know if you guys have been to the website, on the social emotional behavioral health website, but the wellness have done a really good job, and they have a ton of resources up there for the community, different aspects of that aspect for the social emotional behavior learning. So we talked a little bit about that and how to kind of deal with kids in remote learning that could be in a crisis. So how they're gonna deal with that.
So, any other questions? Okay. I think we'll move on. The next item is under G2B, Math Learning Center Training Contract Approval.
You had approved this earlier in the year. It was for face-to-face training, more full-day options. Those have been reduced in amount, and it will be online. And we'll distribute that learning throughout the year instead of what we had planned previously. And so with that also, the Math Bridges refresher training, they're going to focus in on how to change your pacing, knowing that last quarter of last year, the students missed that learning, and they're going to also talk about online strategies for the teachers. So I had surveyed the teachers before even the school closure on their needs for this type of training, and those trainers will focus in on the top needs that those teachers had reported that they needed this for too. So the amount was reduced dramatically, so it's a new contract, so that's why it's before you again.
Move approval.
Motion made by Ken to approve the math learning training contract.
Second.
Seconded by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Carries 7-0. Next is the, we don't have anything under 3. Under technology, so we go to Ray. G, 4A.
The engineering company.
Yep.
So anything to say about the engineering contract, right?
Not particularly, other than this is just the contract.
We've been working with
Work.
ACL Engineering to get a contract ready. We're going to do all the processing. What we typically have an architect do, that's because it's security cameras, it's more engineering in nature. So the choice that we have to approve is either a contract for an architect or so here is our engineers.
So do we have is there a bid on there? An amount?
$15,000
For high school and middle school?
High school and middle school.
High school, middle school, stadium, and exterior of this building as well.
So it covers.
And they install it?
They.
No, they don't do the actual install. This will be put out to bid for contract.
So that's an additional cost?
This is for the
This
plan.
is just the engineering piece of it.
Like where to put them and
That's part of it.
okay.
They came out last week. We did a walkthrough, I believe it was on Friday, several hours.
They do it at other schools.
Yeah.
So the only thing I thought was just interesting is the title of it is like, they pulled off a standard form of agreement between an owner and consultant without a predefined scope of their services.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
It's a unique, we went back and forth, Ray and I, with them quite a bit because, this is mainly, AIA is more for the architect side, but they're trying to make it fit into the engineering side. So it is kind of a different animal, so to speak.
Because there's all this liability stuff and all
Yeah,
that.
it's very boilerplate stuff that is required, so.
Do we know about how much it's gonna cost to install?
And I'd have to go back and look again. I don't recall. I think it was, I want to say it was an 80.
Yeah, 300,000, I was gonna say. Total,
It was
wasn't it?
300. I didn't think it was that much. But maybe it was. It might have been. I honestly can't remember, Lori. It's been so long and I haven't looked at it since I got back from vacation.
I'll move approval.
Motion made by Ken to approve,
Second.
seconded by Ben. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0. Number 5, 6-5, Finance Facilities Support Services. A, B, C, E, G, H, and I will all have separate votes. So just be ready. Here we go.
Be quick.
Bread and milk. Yeah.
Bread and milk.
Yeah.
I seem to think that there's a preference for milk, but we just go with the low one.
Well, because it's a federal program.
Yes.
It's very difficult to say why you wouldn't. Then, what happens if you don't take the low bid, the food service can't pay for it, the general fund would have to do that. So,
I just remember that.
I mean, it's a portion of a cent is what the difference is, but it adds up after the, bread there is not,
It's like AE milk, not the Highland. It's kind of the, it's talked about.
bread, there's only, we really don't have a competitive process, and there's no other competitive bread company than Bimbo.
So I recommend that we accept the milk bid from Highland and the bread bid from Bimbo Bakery. I had to say that.
Motion made by Carolyn to accept the 2 bids for
Second.
bread and milk, seconded by Lori. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Letter B, under 5, designate AHERA contact. Ahera.
This is our asbestos, we have to have, even though we believe that we have eliminated all our asbestos, they could show up in some part, that they, like a wrap of a pipe or something like that, so we always have to have an AHERA contract, which it says asbestos. Because he's our representative. Yeah.
Okay.
So Tom is our plumber in our district, but he's the one that does all the training for this.
Is there a cost in that?
There's an annual training, it's like $300 for him. I know that Bernie's also become trained as well, so there's 2 of them in the district.
So I'll move approval of Tom Tremblay as the district AHERA designated person.
Motion made by Carolyn to approve,
Second.
seconded by Lori. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0, approval. 2020 roof projects, substantial completion.
Both projects are done. We are holding the retainage. By law, we have to hold that for 30 days. But they've said this, and it came soon after our last meeting. But timing isn't important because we've got people in the buildings, it doesn't affect occupancy. So we just need approval for substantial completion.
What does that mean? What is substantial completion?
Typically what they do is when they get to the point where you can enter a building, you can occupy the building, you can substantially, it can be identified as to substantially complete, and then the clock
might
starts
be-
ticking.
Yeah, there might be finishes left to do. Frequently, they'll do what they call a punch list, and they'll go through, they'll look for every little thing. They'll have 30 days to make corrections. Just as an example, Whittier Elementary, when we did the renovations back in 2015-16, we started school, we were substantially complete, but the flooring wasn't done. I mean, there was still work to be done, that's why you hold on. It's usually 5%, right, the retainage. So it's done, it's safe, it can be used, but they still have a few things probably to wrap up. Yep. And as John has said, usually substantial completion, then starts the clock ticking on your warranty.
Warranty,
So-
you typically have a year warranty. With roof, it's sometimes different than that, but this building has a year warranty when we build it, so.
I'll move approval of the substantial completion for the summer roofing projects.
Motion made by Carolyn to approve, seconded by Donna. Any further board discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, no vote. Board Finance Committee meeting report.
I'll start it, and who else was there? Let's see. And you, Rob. So the first topic was something that got brought to our attention. We've always known this, but it was just kind of pointing out that, you know, the need to have equity among elementary schools, and there isn't when you look at some of the PTO fundraising. And it's kind of in my opinion, it's kind of a touchy subject because I kind of grew up with a PTO. That's kind of how I got involved with the schools. And there's a lot of pride with the schools and things like that. But in reality, there is just really, there's strong PTOs and there's PTOs that just aren't as strong. We had a lot of discussion. I don't remember if we really came to any kind of actionable thing, but just an awareness of maybe the need to kind of reconsider and what that could even mean. I mean, we talked about it a long time, and I think we just realized we didn't really know what the next step was.
Right. I feel like that's kind of where we left off.
It is, but one important part of that was Jana has discovered where in some of the budgets, like art supplies and stuff like that, the district should have been doing more, and she's taking care of that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the key action step, exactly.
Yeah.
That as we became aware of different things, you know, there were things we saw, well, that's really curricular, we should be taking care of that, so.
Yeah, it's like the type of paint, like really cheap paint versus a little bit nicer paint, things like that. And it talks about the flat panel displays, that they were gonna originally go through Pebble, but with the camera and the auditorium rigging projects, it made sense to use Pebble for those two projects and move the flat panel cost to the general fund. Elaborate more on the.
It's just that it seemed like that was like, we estimated about $750 for those two projects, which really fit perfectly into the same project versus the computer items. You know, as we're still trying to finish, I mean, again, I always say June 30th is the longest day of the year because it's 2 months long for us. As we watch, you know, try to make sure we have everything taken care of. This fiscal year, we're still looking at that. So right now, we did process it out of the general fund, and if for whatever reason we think we can pull it back, we might, but right now, that's where it's at.
Any other questions from anyone on the board, of the committee? Okay. Move on to the monthly financials. John?
Yep, you can see April's on here, you can see that we're tracking very closely to last year. And what's quite interesting is actually, when you look at the cash flow, and again, it's cash, not budget, I mean, we are right at where we were 2 years ago. So, that, I mean, last year was not that off. you know, but those, it's almost dollar for dollar exactly as from 2 years ago. So, we maintained, even with, declining enrollment, you know, we've maintained, and that's, I think, that's kind of the best we can do, and we're hoping that we can maintain that again next year when we have another bout of that, so. Any specific questions from anyone?
So the local option sales tax was more this year than last year? Right?
We just haven't spent any of it, of our local option. We're saving, part of that, the goal is to save for the building. So last year we spent more of it, this year we did have savings.
But revenues were slightly more, as you look at it. The revenues were about, what do we have there, about $90,000 more.
That's typical, you know, it has gone up. Interestingly enough, sales tax has gone up every year, you know. And this year, they keep saying that thankfully they changed that internet policy that allows them to charge tax.
Well, that's what you had said, and so I just was curious about it. I went, wow, that's pretty amazing.
And really, what happens, we already knew these dollars. They give us a schedule for sales tax every month of what it is ahead of time, so we get it like in August. We won't, then they'll do a true up or true down, and we wondered if it'd be a true down, but I don't think it will in November. So in November, we'll see us jump into what really happened for the balance of the district. Yes, so I mean, the dollars.
When is that again?
That's in November.
No,
So,
actually, okay, because we just approved.
sometimes it's been as much as 300,000, other times it may have been like
Sure.
50,000, you know, so it's always been up.
Okay, yeah. I can just say,
There's the good news.
Yeah.
She'll have to shrink her text down.
so we're whispering over here, like when we do the Pearl thing, would that show up on that?
It's gonna show up, yep, we'll show, it's kind of like this, if you look at the self-insurance fund.
Yeah.
Last year, there's nothing there
Right,
because it
okay.
wasn't, so Pearl will be added in July, yep.
Okay.
Do you have anything in the other 2 pages?
Nobody has any questions? The certified budget comparison, that does not include the amendment we did in May, it will next month, so.
So you need to approve the monthly financials.
I move approval of the monthly financials.
Motion made by Carolyn to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Ken. All those, any further board discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Facilities project update.
You approved the substantial completion of the roofing, wrapping that up. You approved the engineering on the cameras, making very good progress. Flat panels done, pretty much. Stadium moving right along, turf is in, working on the track. And the rigging is supposed to be starting here soon. So the things we had on the calendar are moving. Good.
Okay. Letter G, the setting depositories.
So we have to do that every year. We just have to say that we think that this is what where our estimates will be, and we cover our deposits. People's Bank, I mean, 20 million should be more than adequate, but if you look at when we get our tax money, it would increase. Those types of things, April and October, are when we get the spikes, but 20 million should cover that.
And it wasn't too many years ago that we kind of looked at some of this stuff, right?
We did a bank RFP
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Right.
It's 3 or
Has it
4
been 3?
years ago.
It's been a little bit, but I mean, we periodically kind
Look
of
at that.
shop.
And it's been a very good relationships. I mean, we really have, right?
I'm just trying to say, it's not totally stagnant. There's some review, but it is going well.
And the IceJet is through Iowa School or IASB. We have some funds there. We have about right around 4 million there right now. Again, we go higher just in case we want to move things around. And UMB, that's a lot of our debt is there. So the actual money there is less than 10 million, but it's non-debt processes that we deal with there, so.
I move that we set our official depositories as listed on this paper, People's Bank at 20 million, Iowa Schools Joint Investment Trust at 10 million, and Bankers Trust at 10 million.
Motion made by Ken. Seconded by Ben. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Set official newspaper.
We have to have a print newspaper we submit our items. We submit our minutes, our legal obligations have to go through a print newspaper that goes through the count, or through the district, so that's population. So,
I'm gonna have one option.
we have one option.
There we go.
This is an easy one.
Make a motion to designate the Indiana Record Herald as the official newspaper publication.
Motion made by Ben.
Second.
Seconded by Carolyn. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Slap happy at 9 o'clock.
Motion carries 7-0. Approve resolution of paying bills when the board is not in session.
So the board president gets a list of bills every week, and then we try to get all the monthly bills to you every month. So he reviews them, questions anything that looks, that he has questions on or that look odd, and we try to respond to those. And if anybody has questions monthly, we respond to those as well.
People appreciate the weekly.
It works
So,
better,
yeah.
and it's just a good flow, and we've improved that through the years.
I'll move approval of the resolution for payment of bills when the board is not in session.
Motion made by Carolyn,
I'll second it.
seconded by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? I would just add, Colleen. That lady works on these things so late.
Because she doesn't come in on Fridays during the summertime.
Okay.
So she works to get all our stuff done during that. Usually it's 9 o'clock.
I'm impressed with she's very thorough on stuff. So. What's that?
Yeah, that's what I was just
How
thinking.
about us? We're here.
That's
Oh yeah, well, that's just one night, right? But so she does this weekly. That's all I had. Sorry. All those in favor say no. What the heck? Where are we? Yeah. All those. All those in favor say aye.
You just said you weren't
Any
at that.
opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. On to Art, Superintendent, letter A.
Yep, appointment of legal counsel, again, something we do annually. Allers Law Firm has served us well. They have a number of attorneys we've worked with. They're definitely school law type experts, serve probably, I'm sure, well over 100 districts, maybe more. So my recommendation is to continue our relationship with them.
I move the appointment of Allers Law Firm as our legal counsel.
Motion made by Ken,
I'll second that.
seconded by Carolyn. Any further board discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0.
That's the tricky one.
Appointment of the board secretary, treasurer.
I move that we appoint John Clancy as the board secretary and treasurer.
I second it.
I did see if she would let me do it for a year, and she wouldn't. She thought too much damage would be done, so. Do you have her oath?
I do.
Okay.
We have to vote first.
We gotta vote first. We gotta make sure she makes it in. This is nerve-wracking. Are you nervous?
This is not as tough as the last vote.
Who knows? Hey, stay seated until this vote happens.
You get a speech?
All right. Motion made by Ken, seconded by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right.
Everybody else wants my job.
But I will add, not only are you amazing at your job, but you
still have
make
to
an
go on
amazing
another trip
report,
tonight.
Chris, I'm sure, so. Let me know next time.
Ben remembers that.
Where's it from?
Do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and will you faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge all the duties of the office of Board Secretary Treasurer in Indianola Community School District as now or hereafter required by law?
Yay.
Yay! Congratulations. Nailed it, Jonna.
You nailed it.
Nailed it.
All right. 2020-21 annual board calendar. This is for information purposes only.
Yeah, this is kind of the usual rhythm of the board meetings for us. Maybe the one thing that would be a little different is there have been times in March, depending on spring break, when we've only had one meeting. We have two listed here because spring break falls in between next year. And it's pretty typical to just have one meeting several months, but you know, this is for the board's information. I would say look through it. If you see any dates that don't look good or any needs or anything you want to consider, you know, we can make whatever adjustments we need to.
I think we just need to change oath of new board members from September to.
There's a bunch of stuff that we left, yeah, even because,
Right.
yeah, that we left there just as it's been there, so.
Yep.
Because it would be would it be in November or would it be in September? Because there's
Sure.
not vote this year.
Sure.
That was the question that we had and we didn't have the answer to that when we posted this. So we will, it is tentative scheduling, so we will look at that and make sure that.
And to be honest, I looked at the dates. I really didn't look at the content of the meetings because we put out the proposed or the potential agenda, but things change anyway.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
I have to apologize on the next item, legislative priorities. I let old language get in there. That was from last year, and Steph put this in for me and just carried it over. So I really was not expecting at this meeting that you had spent lots of time on the IASB legislative priorities and that you had 4 picked out. If you were overachievers, did it fine. I don't think we have to pick any certain number either. So
I have a suggestion though.
Okay.
I was on the legislative services for the group. This is basically the same material. If you want to go through this, the beliefs, resolutions, everything you used years before. If we can get you to go down to page 17 on this, what they want to know is what we can pick up to 4 legislative priorities to tell the group that's what we want to work on, and it gets voted on at the National Convention. My recommendation, page 17, can you go to the top there? There's preschool mental health, move one more, and then over to the next page, we got school funding and then supplemental state aid. My recommendation is just to improve how important it is to us. We just send in one recommendation, the one on mental health.
So so we send that in and that's what they
And
focus
we just
on?
say well, everybody else is gonna vote too, but we're saying that's what we think is very important.
It's important now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't argue with that at all. I think other than return to learn planning, getting mental health therapists and mental health services, that's been my focus the last several weeks. Had a couple conversations today. I think it's always important. I think it's going to be tremendously important this year. So I wouldn't argue that as a priority at all.
I agree.
Yeah, I will move that we forward the one mental health as our priority.
I second.
Motion made by Ken.
Sorry.
Seconded by.
Go ahead, Sue. Sue's got one there.
Sue, seconded by Sue/Lord, just joking, Sue. Any further discussion by the board? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Next item is a very quick update too. If you haven't seen it, want to see it, I've got a copy of the city plan and the appendix here. And then I just put the thank you letter in the packet. The new city comp plan, we helped with that. The district was a partner in that. And I went to those meetings, and the Director of Community Economic Development just wrote a little thank you letter there and included, what the vision statement is. And if you want to look at the whole plan, here it is. And I'm sure I have an electronic copy too if you haven't seen it. So that's just for your information.
Next is,
Yeah.
any
No, go ahead.
questions?
I'm sorry.
Any questions? Okay.
We don't vote on that, do we?
What you said?
We don't vote on that.
No, no. Next is the graduate survey.
Yeah. And this is just something, there's a group, My College Options, that works with our graduates, talks about graduate intentions, provides some kind of interesting data, and I just put that in there for you to give you a look. You can see a comparison district to state and then national. I always find it kind of interesting to look at the different interest groups, what the most interesting future careers are, the kinds of colleges that our students plan to attend. So just again, give you that for your information.
I found it interesting. I like charts. Letter G, Board Policy Committee meeting work. Ken and Ben.
There was nothing significant, once again, in these. I think we just cleaned a few things up, added board designee in some areas with the superintendent. There was some old language when Ron was here as far as changing that over to just strictly the HR position. And then I think we all three agreed to, if you guys are comfortable with it, just to approve the second reading, there was no significant changes. Was that correct?
Probably, yeah, I would say we'll just call out the fact that there are several new policies, one of which, what they've all, I think, been talked about. One you have a copy of hard copy of at your place. This is a committee policy that Mr. Bresnan began the work on and then committee looked at and wordsmithed a little bit. Just kind of clarifying purpose of those standing committees of the board and laying out some parameters just so that we're all clear on what the board's desire is with that. And the other two new policies, 705.1R1 is a regulation regarding not working with partners that have been disbarred or had some kind of problem in terms of vendors. And the 705.4 is also new, but it's reflective of our practice already, but it's just a pretty thorough policy from IASB about using taxpayer funds for public purpose. So if you've had a chance to look through those and don't have questions, I think it's great. We can do the whole group, approve first reading, waive the second, but if you want to do anything with those that are new policies or have any further conversation, we sure can.
I move that we approve the policies for first reading, all policies for the first reading, and waive the second.
Motion made by Ken.
Second.
Seconded by Donna. Any further discussion?
I had a question.
Board. Carolyn.
There was the one about the subcommittees, so that's included in all this?
208.
There were
Yes,
comments.
208.1.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, I didn't have a problem with it, I was just,
So it'd probably be good for all of us to kind of just review that one, and just make sure we're good. Or not make sure, hopefully we're good tonight, but just make sure we're on it.
Probably
After our
more
committee
important
meetings.
than my cabinet that we review it and make sure that we're meeting, in terms of notice and cancellation and minutes. There are a few things that that are put in there, that we'll want to, for example, agenda's out 48 hours before the meeting, minutes to the board after the meeting, that kind of thing. Communication with the board to see their desire, if there's ever a cancellation. And then the other one which comes up, is if we have 3 members on a committee and 2 can't make it, we need to reschedule.
And then
Those are
yeah.
the things.
Well, and I think according to our work session, other board members can attend these committees.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
can sit for public, I mean, they can't
Yeah,
say
and
anything.
that's true. You know, and that's always been the case. You could come as a member of the public and sit.
I didn't realize that.
The reason we kind of avoid it is just the temptation to chime in or be more than just a fly on the wall. And then, then you may unintentionally have a quorum there. So, but yeah, you're right. There's nothing that precludes you as a non-committee member from being a pure observer of a committee.
You're coming to finance now, aren't you?
One of the problems that I see it is,
Coming to age over.
all the other people would know if they heard is that there were 4 people there. They wouldn't, the general public sometimes and all of that. That's right. So if it can be avoided, that's great, but it's still possible.
I think there just needs to be enough heads up, like if you want to attend,
Yeah.
it's gotta be posted, it's gotta be.
And we're always willing to make
Yeah.
it a special meeting.
Yeah.
Or something, high interest or whatever, it's easy. As long as we have 24 hours notice, we'll just post it as a special meeting,
Well, I
and we
don't-
don't have to worry.
I don't even think it, okay, but I don't think it has to be
Doesn't
posted
have to be,
according to
it doesn't
Miriam.
have to be, but again,
I thought it did.
in terms of
Didn't.
Oh,
showing that there's gonna be a quorum there, or having
If-
that
if
person
they
be able to
dead
speak.
silent.
Yeah, they have to, but if they go,
Yeah.
they're purely an observer, if we didn't post it as a meeting and we're
Okay.
over a quorum.
Yeah.
so you can go listen, but if you're
Yeah.
gonna talk, you gotta post it.
And they need to go
Okay.
sit by themselves.
And they actually did say that, yeah, don't sit at the same table, go.
Right.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah, it was. Okay, any further discussion by the board?
And I was just gonna say, I would take that seriously, because I remember like with the city
Yes.
got in trouble. Yeah, I mean, even though it seems innocent, you gotta take this pretty seriously.
yeah, that was part of our training for the law firm too, they
See, I wasn't
referenced a
Yeah.
county lawsuit.
I remember
And the
that
fact
one.
that you have, as board members, you have individual penalties,
Yeah.
fines.
I don't need those.
We did pull.
Yeah, we didn't get paid, but we get penalized.
That's right.
One policy out here separately, because this is an annual review, so the Title I compliance, parent involvement policy and compact has to be reviewed annually, so we put that in a separate thing from the other ones, so we can show it in our minutes easily.
Is anything coming up for like board agendas? Is that in policy? Did we already do that?
Okay.
We did that a while ago, yeah,
We
because we
did,
changed
okay.
the numbering.
Okay. I was just
I'll take a
wondering.
look, yeah.
I was just thinking, nothing against, I mean, you guys were working right up to the clock and stuff, but I was just thinking, if it was able to come out on a Thursday,
That's,
like, it would be
that's our
just so
preference and
nice
our goal. We would always prefer.
for the board members.
Especially this
It just give us time to be able to maybe flush it out with other community members, whatever.
We're pulling pieces together from a lot of different.
Yeah, I understand.
Sometimes we can't get something in.
Yeah.
As long as we're speaking about the agenda, I did have trouble getting on this. I usually go to the
It was a hard.
website and, I'm trying to get there because I can see it on my computer. But I couldn't get in to some things, as I'd hit in the highlights, had Google document, and information, which meant people in the community didn't. So I wondered if that is a glitch on my computer or.
I tried that and I jumped to the email, because I couldn't, it just spun.
Yeah, they have different things. So I want to make sure everybody can see everything.
That's something we can explore. That's the whole point of putting it online like
I
that.
know,
So it's
yeah.
accessible, I agree.
And I had some weird ones tonight when I was just clicking on
I know.
it. Like it took me back to the whole plan. Like it wouldn't take me to the link. It would just, it's like the link was broken or something, but I don't know.
We'll have to click through.
Yeah.
We talked, there was one of those, I remember we talked about having somebody who didn't have permission to try to click to make sure it worked. To an outside person.
Oh, okay.
Because there's.
We'll investigate that. We don't want to frustrate
Okay.
people.
Any further discussion by the board? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Was that for the Title I?
That was for board policies.
Okay.
And then Title I
I'm sorry.
compliance.
Jumped the gun. I started talking about Title I before we had that vote finished, sorry. This is just one that it's called out separately. because we have to show that we address this annually. There really were not changes to speak of to either the contract or the policy.
Okay. Motion made by Donna.
Okay, yeah, okay, I move that we approve the Title I compliance parent involvement policy.
Seconded.
Motion made by Donna, seconded by Lori. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. This is the last of the votes for people. Board calendar.
Okay, we do have finance tomorrow.
What's on the agenda? I don't remember seeing that did that come out 40
Just
hours?
enrollment, it did not come out. So you're speaking of an example, that's.
Got it under the wire, the policy just got approved. Next time, 48 hours.
Sorry?
Wait, did we already swear her in as?
You see the one there for swearing out?
I know.
Okay, let's get to that.
Oh, there it is. It's on the back side.
Short letter.
Easy come, easy go.
Yeah, so we do have finance tomorrow, we're talking about enrollment. I think it's fun to, opportune time to talk about enrollment, right?
Well, okay, so I was gonna bring this up under other, because I was texting with John a while ago. So one of the things that's why I was kind of calling out the homeschool thing, is like, I sat and thought, with everything going on, we don't know what people are gonna choose, it's their choice. But I just started thinking, like, if for some reason people aren't clear on like the online versus the homeschool, and they opt for homeschool, if they do it knowingly, that's fine, but, when we do our certified enrollment, we're gonna be counting kids like this fall, and if there is a significant number that homeschool, the reality would be that our numbers will reflect that. We would have, then the budget gets impacted the next school year. So if kids homeschool, not online, but homeschool for a year, and then come back in, it's gonna be strange, because we're gonna be short money, and then the kids are back. Like, it might be good this year, in the sense that maybe the classroom sizes are smaller, if they're opting for that option. I mean, I'm not talking about the online, but just the actual homeschool. But it could, if there's a significant number that really truly pick homeschool at any district, it's gonna, and just for a year, it's gonna cause some disruption.
But I think most people, when they're thinking at home, are thinking remote learning.
If there's,
But you're right, we do.
yeah, I think we need to be clear.
There is quite a few that have switched to homeschooling. They're going through a company they'll just homeschool. They'll go into their regulations, not ours.
Right, and then what'll happen, like, we'll have the budget this year that we know of, but then if the count goes down X%, then the next year, we have to deal with that. And if it's a one-year deal and they come back, we're lagged a year. And if they don't come back, we might need to make adjustments to budget. Just calling that out.
Are we at other now?
No, she was talking about
Well, we don't,
enrollment.
I mean, under our current board agenda, we really don't have other, because we have the board reports up top, so that, I think, as we retool our agenda.
Well, I was just gonna prep real quick about our mental health committee
Oh, yeah?
and what we've got going on. We did 5 interviews, and we are ending up with all local Indianola providers. So we're excited about that, with the goals that we'll have a full-time person out at the middle school 5 days a week. We'll have somebody at the high school. We're looking at, this can still kind of go all over, but
I think it'll be more than one provider, but I'm really
Yeah.
shooting for 5 days a week there too.
yeah. And then
And,
our elementaries will be covered at least 3 days a week, if not 4. So, so that was
Thank you.
that's what I've been working on. So it looks like my work here is done. I'm out. I'm out. What do I need to do? I know. Can you swear me out? You swore.
I have no need to swear, but can I move to adjourn?
Motion made by Ken to adjourn, seconded by Ben.
I'm really.
Favor say
That's
aye.
what's running out.
Say aye. All right. Motion carries 7-0. Or not. You dare.
Unanimous vote, they're taking the Indians.
You're just sitting there like a
That's gonna come out here.
Now we just need to meet with the actual